Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall. After the Yellowwood 500 at Talladega, unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection, Ryan Blaney has now scored his third Talladega victory, and once again in dramatic fashion with a photo finish right across the stripe. So certainly a dramatic turn of events. We had several contenders that you maybe would not necessarily expect up front at a super speedway, much less a Cup Series race. A lot of comers and goers there at the same time. Kevin Harvick very close, probably the closest he's been all year to pulling off a victory this season. But comes up just short, 12 thousandths of a second, the unofficial margin of victory. And we will find out what's going to be happening here along the way too. So yeah, kind of get your thoughts right off the bat. I mean, it sounds like the comments are pretty positive already. I know Ryan Blaney's got a big fan base already, but again, rather than jump right into everything on the broadcast, just kind of let me know your thoughts. Like, well, how are we feeling? Are we feeling good? Are we happy? Are we not happy? Where are we at right now? I imagine if you're a Harvick fan, you're probably not, or if you're just judging the racing itself. But yeah, definitely let me know in the chat here, and we'll kind of go from there. So again. And thank you, Bowser Jr., for your super chat here as well. Thank you very much for the commentary praise. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into that for sure. And again, I really enjoyed the way that you did the play-by-play of the finish of the Truck Series race yesterday, and I definitely have more thoughts on that as well. There are actually a few people that were also kind of sharing their own versions of that as well, so that was certainly entertaining. But definitely, the play-by-play is definitely going to be a story for both of these races, particularly the Truck Series race. A little bit in this race as well. We got our old buddy Rick Allen with the so-and-so on the inside and so-and-so on the outside, repeating himself there. So, yeah, but hey, we'll figure that out from there. Alrighty, so we have, again, a little bit of everything here. An unusual last place finish for Ross Chastain. As was mentioned in the chat here, yep, the first time he's finished last in a Cup Series points-paying race since the 2022 Daytona 500, which was his first points-paying start in the Trackhouse #1. Of course, he did run the Clash before that, where he also didn't qualify for the main event in that one, so actually had a pretty difficult start to it. But of course, now with 3 victories, Trackhouse itself with the 2 additional victories since then, with Daniel Suarez at Sears Point and Shane Van Gisbergen at the Chicago Street Course earlier this summer. Again, it's very unusual to really see that team back there, but that was ultimately the story from there. But really kind of surprising. I jumped into this broadcast a bit later with the start of the race, but did watch the first part of it there to kind of catch up. And one thing I was really pleased with this broadcast is just the green flag racing, that we had a lot of green flag racing. You could actually see some strategy, and you could see who was able to kind of get up there and stay up there. It wasn't a complete crapshoot where you just have wreck after wreck, and you got cars falling to pieces, and maybe you only got like a portion of the field that was left, really pretty much all the way until they came down to between the big wreck and the tri-oval, and then a couple of the wrecks there coming to the finish line. That kept things pretty wide open there, so it was good to see. But unfortunately, Chastain wasn't able to really be a part of that, as just short of the end of Stage 1 was involved in an incident there where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ran out of fuel, had a little bit of an opening there, looked like he was going to try to make a 4-wide pass into the third corner there, but the hole started closing up, kind of bounced off Kyle Busch, car got out of control, and right there at corner entry, I imagine these cars just get so loose that there's not much really any of them can do, and broke loose and got into the outside wall. Seemed like possibly they could do something with the toe link, but you get any kind of serious damage there on these cars, and especially in a race that had such low attrition for more than really the first half of the race. You're going to pretty much have a bad afternoon the rest of that day, and potentially have issues with minimum speed, even with a top flight team like that. So, first time that the #1 has finished last in a Cup Series race at Talladega since 1990, when Terry Labonte was driving the Skoal Oldsmobile for Richard Jackson. So it had been many years since then. In fact, that's the only time prior to today, again, pending the results of post-race inspection, that the #1 has finished last in a Cup Series race at Talladega. But that was the battle at the end of the field there. We did see a lot of shuffling in the order there. Chastain himself was towards the back of the field when he and Suarez were kind of dropping back there to kind of stay clear of the any kind of possible danger there. Front Row Motorsports as well with their trio there, with Riley Herbst having a fantastic run out there today. I definitely want to kind of get into that as well. But all of them being contenders for last place. Ricky Stenhouse was another driver that went from last place all the way to the front, and then had everything else kind of happen to him during the race today. Yeah, again, I thought it was a very competitive last place battle. I'd say probably the easiest situation is when you have somebody that drops out on the first lap, or having a wreck or a mechanical issue at the very beginning, and they don't come back out there. This was definitely more of a challenging one because it was changing almost by the lap for those first 60 or so laps before the Chastain accident unfolded. So it'll be an interesting article from there. I was able to kind of piece a lot of that together, and hopefully you guys enjoy that as well. But let's focus on the man of the hour here as well. Ryan Blaney again punches his ticket into the round of 8 with another third victory there at Talladega Superspeedway this weekend. Fords, once again, really showing their dominance at the Superspeedways, which is the reason I picked Brad Keselowski, while Last Bro is still celebrating here after picking Blaney for our fantasy league there. And undoubtedly, he's now taking the point lead in that now with about 5 races to go. But yeah, as much as you really had the Fords be as dominant as they were, still some drivers mixing it up there when you had William Byron and Denny Hamlin getting up there. Byron, your third place finisher. Denny Hamlin in the 4th position. Corey LaJoie in 5th, although I've seen some comments already that people probably already weren't that big of a fan of some of the moves there at the end. I would personally think that, especially with the contact with Riley Herbst, I mean, it seemed like one zigged and the other zagged, and just an unfortunate situation there for those guys. But LaJoie still in the 5th spot. Austin Cindric came back from losing a lap on a pit road penalty to finish in 6th. Justin Haley, the colleague team, has just had kind of a disastrous year, really. And I know that Haley's preparing now for the Rick Ware effort next year and seeing how things go there. But a 7th place finish for him. Chase Elliott in 8th. Ryan Preece in one of the shake and bake cars there, the Talladega Night Schemes, getting in 9th. And then we definitely have to talk about the man who finished in 10th. Riley Herbst comes back home 0.4 of a second back of the leader, but was running easily better than that this entire day. I would have to say, I only spoke to Riley briefly at Fontana after he got the top 10 finish at the 500 this year, but he has been consistently impressive in that 36 car this year. I mean, we've seen Zane Smith in that car. We've seen, other drivers swap in and out, Todd Gilliland having to swap rides and so forth when they bring Zane on board and all that. But again, as challenging as these super speedways are, and as much as Riley Herbst is, of course, still trying to get his first Xfinity win and has come short on that many different times, I would say that I've been thoroughly impressed with him in his Cup Series efforts this year. And this race today was easily his most impressive. He was in and around the top 5, not just the top 10, but the top 5 pretty much the entire day. Was fastest in first round qualifying. Defended that to get a top 10 start in the race itself. And just put together a tremendous show. We know that Talladega has been a place that has had a lot of unusual winners. Drivers in some cases that this was their only win. You think about Phil Parsons or, drivers of that caliber there too. Almost said Brian Vickers, but Vickers won other racers later. You have other contenders that, that was really their only shot at it. Dick Brooks, you go much further back into racing history there. Richard Brickhouse, of course, the inaugural winner. Could have very easily had this situation. 36 car, I don't even remember the last time that number won. I think back to the MB2 days when Ken Schrader was driving it, or Ernie Irvin or the others over the M&M's car era there. And I got to say, I think the paint scheme helped. I like that they did a cross promotion with other flavors of the Monster Energy drink, so it wasn't just the same black and green car. I know they're trying to, establish something with their brand where it's just this uniformity of it. But we've now seen that same exact paint scheme on so many different teams with so many different drivers. And wouldn't you know it, that the first time they change it, the car gets more attention than it probably has ever had, at least on the Cup Series side there too. So a tremendous effort for Riley there as well. Again, and it's unfortunate things didn't turn out the way he wanted to. He was potentially going to still finish in the top 5. Contact with Corey LaJoie coming through the tri-oval there sent him into Chase Elliott, a couple other cars spinning out there at the end. Dropped a little bit further back in the rankings there. It's really a shame, too, because I'm sure they have a really good car there with that. But hopefully they can still piece that together, and that'll be a team and a driver that maybe we'll be watching again in Daytona this next February. So that'll be something else to look forward to. But congratulations to Herbst on what was easily a career run in his Cup Series effort there. And hopefully that trickles down to the Xfinity Series, and we can have one of these shows where we talk about him getting his first Xfinity win. So fingers crossed on that. Also, great day for really both the Open teams. Of course, Riley Herbst's effort. The other Open team entry, Chandler Smith, we saw him in and out of the top 10 for portions of this race as well. Really crazy situation there, but still ends up in the 12th spot, right ahead of Todd Gilliland in the other Front Row Motorsports entry there. One of the other two, of course, there for the trio. But fine job by Chandler Smith as well. I believe if memory serves, he was pretty good. One of the other super speedway races earlier this year. Of course, he didn't qualify for the Daytona 500, but had to bounce back from that. Was good at Richmond when he had his first Xfinity Series win earlier this year, too. According to Racing Reference, 36 has never won a Cup race. Oh, thank you, Ben, for pulling that up. Yeah, well, there you go. It could have been very easily history of a very different nature here, too. So that would be one to talk about at the same time. Playoff contenders a little bit scattered through the field, despite Ryan Blaney punching his ticket. Byron and Hamlin, the only other playoff drivers in the top 14 spots. And Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick from 15th through 17th. Truex and Buescher back in 19th and 20th. Seemed like Buescher was kind of coming on there towards the end, potentially having a run at least as good as he had back in the summer race at Daytona, where he and Keselowski had that 1-2 finish. Unfortunately, was not meant to be here. Bubba Wallace was really bold in forcing a fourth line there towards the end of that race. We saw some really hairy moves there around that time, and people trying to figure out how they're going to kind of stay in formation there. Unfortunately, Bubba still gets shaken out and finishes back in the 24th spot here. Kyle Busch in 26th, so a difficult couple of weeks there after the early accident last week at Texas, along with his teammate there, Austin Dillon. That was your last place finisher. Busch comes out of this one with a 26th place finish, your winner here in the spring race. Going even further back, you go back to Brad Keselowski. Heartbreaker for that, not just the fact that I picked him to win the race. I really thought that was going to be a solid pick. I thought that this was going to be a real chance to at least get his first win of the season. I know that as happy as he is for Buescher, I'm sure he's anxious to punch his ticket to not only get to the next round and not have to worry about the Roval or anything else, but just trying to work his way up there. Again, much like Herbst, was in and out of the top 5, maybe not as consistently as Herbst in the first stage there, but was pushing Carson Hocevar up there. Hocevar got hooked. Very serious accident there. This weekend saw a lot of hard hits, which sounds kind of like an unusual thing to say about Talladega. Of course, every montage you ever see about this track is going to be crashes of some kind, whether in the past or present. But in this case here, really saw some really savage hits. The Keselowski incident sending both Ty Gibbs and Austin Dillon head on into the outside wall, very reminiscent also of the wreck that Gibbs had with Blaney at Daytona just 2 months ago. Again, you have the safer barrier, you have the new car, hopefully some crush zones that work a little bit better than the past. We do actually see these cars deform and kind of crumple a bit more, so that energy isn't absorbed by the driver, it's actually absorbed by the car. But regardless, that was a very hard hit that Dillon in particular had. Ty Gibbs to an extent as well. And I know Gibbs was very frustrated after that wreck that he had at Daytona at the same time, and said that the cars are still entirely too stiff, and he was visibly unhappy, as well he should be, for the wreck itself there in his post-race interview there at the same time. But Austin Dillon ends up in the 34th spot, Gibbs in 35th, Hocevar in 36th. First bad run, really, the Hocevar's really had in the 42 car. And even in this case here, after losing a lap at one point during this race, and then still getting back up there and challenging for at least a decent run in this one, was still running solidly when he got involved in the accident. Unfortunately, a 36th place finish will be the result. J.J. Yaley takes home 37th. by the radio transmissions. It seemed to indicate that there was a fuel pump problem. They were trying to fix the relay on that, then change the pump out, send him back out there. The car was still low on RPM, so they sent him behind the wall again. It looks like he may have come back out a third time because he's credited with about 83 laps completed there. I believe he only had about 70 or so at the time that he came out the second time. But regardless, he ends up dropping out and finishing in the bottom 5 there, which is too bad. Yaley in particular, you think back to Atlanta earlier this summer, the great run he had there on the super speedway with the other Rick Ware Racing entry, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be this time around there too. And yes, Mark, also mentioning the fact that Keselowski was airborne in that accident. Yes, certainly. I know Jeff Gluck made some statements about that potentially being something more serious. This was definitely a race that kind of reminded you about some of the past wrecks before. In Keselowski's case, I think it kind of reminds you of Scott Riggs had a very scary accident on that very portion of the track. In fact, about the same time that I think either that Talladega Nights was coming out or was part of that there. Had a very big accident down there on the apron. I know we always talk about the dangers of grass, certainly after the Ryan Preece accident at Daytona earlier this year. But again, even on just a flat surface, these cars can, potentially get airborne. And thankfully, in Keselowski's case, it wasn't a situation where the car tumbled on the pavement there. But the car did catch air. You're very right to point it out. So that was definitely another storyline on there, too. But other drivers through the field, where did Brennan Poole finish? I'm seeing him mentioned there. Nathaniel, thank you for bringing him up as well. Poole, 31st, the only car 2 laps down. Looked like pretty much one of the last drivers to finish the race under power. Poole was, along with Riley Herbst and Denny Hamlin, were battling for the Lucky Dog spot at Daytona back in August. Unfortunately, all 3 were involved in that accident, and Poole ended up in last place after a pretty hard hit to the inside wall there. This time around, it was Keselowski with a pretty good hit there to the barrier, just past the gap to the infield there. Really, different scenario here. Good to see him at least finish the race under power, though well back in the order. Eric Jones had some adversity to overcome as well. He ends up finishing in 27th spot, but he had a much better car than that. The team was very upset over the radio when they were talking about NASCAR penalizing them. Apparently, according to them, as I tweeted earlier, that there was a crew member that was apparently a double-purpose crew member who was carrying 2 tires, and they counted that as a crew member over the wall too soon, or too many crewmen over the wall. And the conjecture from the team was that the NASCAR was just kind of making up rules as they went along. At least that's how they felt in terms of the enforcement of that penalty. As much as I am not a big fan of so-called rules, I think that's one to, it's a perfect example of it. When it comes down to being a judgment call, it basically made it sound like, to me, at least from their description of it, that they were treating too many men over the wall or a crewman over too soon with just one guy instead of being more than one person. So that was kind of a bizarre situation. And the team was definitely grappling with that. And ultimately, they were in last place for a portion of that. Tried to get back up there. Unfortunately, still not a great finish. Jones has really had some good runs at Talladega, but unfortunately, this is not one of them. Ty Dillon, have to mention him at the same time. This is a driver that began the year as really being a problem with, having a decent run. You imagine back at Daytona where he finished last in both the dual race and the 500. Took an early lead in the last car standings through this year. That has now since changed with B.J. McLeod looking to defend his title from last season. But Ty Dillon there ends up back in the 28th place spot there, but actually got the lead under green, was able to kind of shuffle his way up there. I thought they showed very impressive speed and perhaps could have had a run at least as good as his teammate LaJoie did. Unfortunately, that's not what we're really seeing here in the final results here at the end of the day. Michael McDowell, didn't mention him. The other Front Row Motorsports entry back in the 22nd spot, ends up some distance behind both of his teammates there, the final running order. But regardless, again, Ryan Blaney, your race winner there. This race had a little bit of everything, whether that was a fire on pit road, which was thankfully contained very quickly. And NBC could not wait to go to a commercial break after that, which I thought was pretty absurd. I know that this is the situation where, you could pretty much conclude that fuel spilled on the middle of pit road is probably going to be extinguished pretty quickly. But this was a pretty big fire, and pretty dangerous situation. Who knew what was going to happen to the the actual fuel canister itself. Very rare to see a fire this big. Usually we've had situations where fuel spilling out on the ground catches on fire. We've had Chris Buescher had that situation not long ago. I believe it happened at New Hampshire as well to another team. Really kind of a crazy situation. I thought when I first saw it that the plastic hose had somehow broken or ruptured or something like that. Maybe that's why so much fuel came out to create such a large fire as that was. But other pictures that were posted, and big thanks to the people that were following up on this story, the hose was still there, or at least it was still connected. It was scorched a bit there, as was the rest of the can. But again, and I hate to have to say this again because it feels like we say this and we don't really hear more details on it, but I do hope we do get more details on exactly what the failure modality of that was and what came up. I was particularly struck by Steve Letart's analysis of it and saying that it's made of aluminum and aluminum doesn't spark. I've never really thought about that. I mean, I'm no expert in working with metals and stuff like that. But I would think that, you drag any kind of metal across a rough surface like asphalt, you're going to have the potential of sparks or something coming up to ignite it there. But perhaps not. I mean, I guess if you have a Coke can that's crammed against the fender of your car, maybe it wouldn't kick up sparks. It would just flake out because it's really thin material. But again, hopefully that's going to be part of the analysis, like what part of that equipment failed and what led to that situation. Thankfully, that fire was contained. I mean, you could pretty much tell they were starting to extinguish it before they went to commercial break. But I think it would have been nice if they at least resolved that before they so quickly rushed to commercial. It wasn't a situation where it was, catching or becoming more of a dangerous situation. But I just thought that was a little bit strange versus some of this. And again, there's so many risks and so many dangers in the sport already. The booth really has to prepare for that too, to actually address that at the same time. So really with the actual play-by-play to this broadcast, I don't have too many notes on this race versus the Truck Series race. The Truck Series race is the broadcast was really bad, and we'll have another portion of that. I have the screen hooked up. We may bring back a certain other segment from a little while back, but that would be a different deal there. But yeah, that would be. I thought it was decent. There were. It was, I think at most, it was at least a broadcast that didn't seem to take too much from the experience. I felt like it was covering, what was happening on track pretty well. I think Dale Jr. was solid. I think Steve Letarte was solid. Rick Allen, I'm just not a big fan of, but it was more or less the same. I didn't feel like it was much better or worse than that. Clearly, they were excited about Talladega, and I think they do step up their game a little bit for this race because it is such a high ticket item, and of course it's such a traditional NASCAR race in the sense of super speedway racing and pack racing and all that. And the racing itself was more competitive this time around. I think that also particularly helped. That much like the Daytona night race we had a few weeks ago, we actually had some 2 and 3 wide racing. We actually had some drivers that could work their way through the field. I was particularly excited by people that were able to be in the back of the field and actually climb back up to actually be among the leaders. So I think that was very much a positive sign on that one. And again, as I've said before on this show, a race doesn't have to have a whole lot of big wrecks in order to be a good race, even at a super speedway like this. It should frustrate you when a caution comes out. Like, there was pretty decent racing towards the end of this, and he had a debris caution for admittedly what was a pretty big piece of debris on the back straightaway. You could see it get kicked around between the different cars. But it was almost a shame that had to come out, because the longer you have a green flag run, the more you really start to see the strategies unfold. You really start to see who's trying to line up with who, who's going to try to make a move for the lead and maybe it stalls out, or maybe they'll try something different and advance again. That's what I think is really interesting in super speedway racing, which is why I think the camera work is really important. I do think there's still a lot of trick shots that kind of hide what's happening. But it was decent. But I wouldn't say it was like the greatest NBC broadcast ever. There certainly weren't any lines from the play-by-play that stand out in my mind like, oh man, that just fit the moment perfectly. Like, no, I didn't really sense any of that. I'll have to rewatch the finish of the race there, see if there was anything on that. Because pretty much Last Bro and I were hooting and hollering on that like anybody else would. And I think that comes to another point on the subject of play-by-play in general. I think that the other, and this was brought up by a couple of people here on social media this week, because Jamie Little ended up actually kind of trending on Twitter a little bit after the Saturday race there, is like, what's really the big deal about play-by-play? Are you watching the race to watch the race, or are you watching the race to hear the play-by-play of that? And then you would think that play-by-play would be much more important on radio because, of course, it's not a visual medium, and that's the entire experience. I still think that it's it makes it even better. It's the whipped cream on top. It is not a extraneous or excessive thing. It isn't something that you can just leave out and the broadcast is going to be better. I just think it's important. I just think, why wouldn't you not want it to be even better? And again, you could have play-by-play and completely ignore it and just be in the moment and just remember it for what you see and all that. But again, the best play-by-play, really just adds so much more to it. And I think it's a sad commentary on how long it's been that we've had decent commentary. I don't know if it's just a combination of having the Gen 6 car and having that car be such a failure for most of that time in creating non-competitive racing and these different rule changes and creating all these gimmicks and complexities that distract from the way that a race normally plays out, to the point that we don't know what decent play-by-play is anymore. And then at the same time, you got new technology where people can do it remotely, but that's not an excuse where you can watch, for example, an iRacing competition, and you got people that are on different parts of the world, not even the same country, and they could do fantastic play-by-play and really add something to it. So distance isn't the issue. It is, as much as you really do need to be there to really put on, I think, the best possible effort out there. But it still is a part of the show. It really is. If you could, just because you could do something without something doesn't mean you should. Or and I think the problem is the more people get used to the mediocrity of play-by-play, the more accepting they're going to be of solutions that maybe none of us are going to like. I don't like the fact that they're looking into using AI to doing play-by-play of golf competitions, for example. That's ridiculous. And that should, and you don't want to have, do we really want to risk a situation there where you just lose an art form, really? You lose a little bit more of the soul, make it more and more, make it less organic, make it less, performative. It is entertainment. And I do think that the play-by-play is part of that entertainment. And I think it's a critical part of it there. Are you 100% listening to that and not focusing on the race? Of course not. It's all meant to be part of the situation. And everybody can think right now about 3 or 4 examples of a moment where it was so perfectly synthesized between the broadcast and the play-by-play that it just worked out. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our other segment here. And we'll bring back, we've got the double screen here, so let's jump into this. Let me make sure this is working. I want to make sure, because that would not help if it is not. So, we'll talk about the Truck Series race here. I also want to talk about the K&N West Series race from last night. And if you guys have any other questions about the Cup Series race that I didn't address here at the same time, definitely let me know. But we'll talk about that. But I wanted to get into final. Okay, there we go. You probably heard that. So we got to switch to this input here. There we go. Okay. So we're going to try this again. So here we are again. So we did this with, what was it? Was it Kansas a while back? We had that really crazy battle, and Christian Eckes was going for the lead. So this week, this race here, we had just another dramatic weekend. It seemed like it was going to be like a real dominating weekend for Front Row Motorsports in general. I think this is probably the best overall weekend that Front Row has had, despite the bad luck that Zane Smith had in the Truck Series race yesterday, and despite the fact that Michael McDowell wasn't right up there with Gilliland and Herbst at the end. Some things just happen to super speedways, and we'll definitely get into that in the Truck Series discussion. That will be another part of that too. So let's see here. I believe this is okay. I think I can see the white flag here in the background. I think this is just the white flag of this.
White flag is in the air.
Next flag will end it. See Moffitt go up to the high side.
Kligerman comes with him. We know how fast that truck's been. There's the block.
Christian.
Okay. All right. First off, not bad. Not bad. I would say, and I don't know how much I emphasized this when we did this for Kansas, I think Phil Parsons is the strongest person in that booth. Is it just me? I really feel that. I think he actually tends to describe the action really well. And I think he's not lost as much momentum as Michael Waltrip has in terms of describing what's happening. But right there, I mean, the way that Michael Waltrip and Phil Parsons bounced off each other was pretty good to describe how well that Parker Kligerman is and how fast he's been, and Brett Moffitt making this move, trying to get around Christian Eckes. But then the play-by-play needs to build on that. So let's go from there.
And there's the block.
Christian Eckes tries to block him, goes to the top. He's on the outside, 3 wide.
Okay. Now, I talked about this on the last one. The one thing that these broadcasters, and especially seems to come up in these Truck Series races, if it was 3 wide anything, if it was 3 wide cars in a parking lot, they will never miss it. They will always cover a 3 wide. They'll never miss a 3 wide thing. But the problem is, while that's good, it's good that they don't ignore it and just pretend it didn't happen. You can't just say 3 wide. That's not enough. Like you gotta follow it up with something. How about, especially here, I think the other thing that's more interesting is you have a situation here where Brett Moffitt is actually making a move through the middle here, and you got a situation where Christian Eckes is stuck in the high lane, and he's got no help, and he's going to drop all the way to the back, and you got a situation where it's going to come down to Moffitt versus, Chandler Smith to the inside. I think that, there's more going on. So it's like 3 wide. Look at this move through the middle as Moffitt makes the move here, and it's coming down to Moffitt and Smith. Who will prevail? Like something of that nature. So okay, let's keep going.
Through the middle, Brett Moffitt with a big push from Parker Kligerman. Can the inside line get that speed, get that energy? Ben Rose.
Okay, all right. Can the inside line? Get the energy. All right. Decent. I don't like this energy thing. This is like an NBC thing that just started like the last few years. Like that wasn't something that was really used in the past. I get what they're kind of trying to say, like how much momentum. It's usually momentum that would talk. It's like, look at the run this guy has. Like, that's energy is too nebulous of a term. It's like, look at the run he's getting. You want like this is the move they're getting. Look at this. And also, the action is already outfoxed, if you excuse the pun here, is outfoxed her in this case, because now the leaders have already, you talk about the inside line making a move, but the leaders have now cut down in front of them. So the inside line's not going anywhere. So now you got to, course correct. Let's see how that goes.
Rhodes is pushing.
Both of those drivers got clear of Chandler Smith.
Okay, good. Phil Parsons brings it. It's a little bit behind. But again, you're describing what has happened. The reason Phil Parsons is doing that, though, is because Jamie Little didn't bring it up. And that was the most important thing. It's like they come down in front of Smith. That should be a big moment because Smith had a fast truck. He's an Xfinity Series regular. He's running double duty this weekend. You can bring up that, he's being a real favorite to pull off the win. We'll talk about the locking bumpers thing, too, because that was a whole other issue. But okay, now we freeze framed it again. And again, you got to just pick up the speed a little bit. I'm not saying it has to be like a scat singing thing where you're just constantly filling the air with words, because that could be too much too. But okay, now the complexion of this has changed again. Parker Kligerman is to the outside. He's a past Talladega winner. He's trying to pull off the win against Brett Moffitt. But now he has no help. And Corey Heim is way far back there with Nick Sanchez and so forth. And, how's this going to play out?
Brett Moffitt.
Chandler Smith, he's got to run.
Chandler Smith, he's got to run. Like, okay, Mikey. I mean, he's stuck behind him. Like he can't do anything. He's got the yellow line below him. He's got Parker Kligerman to the outside. Heim is now catching Kligerman, so the hole is closing up. Describe something like that. Like maybe just play that in there. I don't know, but he's got momentum, but he can't go anywhere.
Chandler Smith pushing the 34.
How about this? This is where something like Larry McReynolds would love a moment like this, because now you have a situation where the inside line is moving and Parker Kligerman's dropping back, but Larry McReynolds would be like almost a cheerleader, be like, move to the outside, like try to have almost encourage like Chandler Smith to like duck out of line here and swing past Moffitt, because they're coming down, of course, as we all know with these Talladega broadcasts, the starting line isn't in the middle of the tri-oval, it's way at the exit of it. So there could be a move here. Again, just try to just include something. He would almost shout over people, which again, as critical as I'm usually of that of NBC doing it, Larry McReynolds had a decent balance of that because he didn't do it all the time. The problem with NBC is they get everybody to shout over each other, and then it just gets to be too much. Obviously, we're talking about an FS1 broadcast, so this is different here. Nothing.
He takes
okay, there we go. Now he has moved to the outside. So, okay, see? You could see that coming from the beginning part of it there. But, yeah.
The outside. Ben Rhodes takes a look to the inside. He hangs on.
Ben Rhodes did not take a look to the inside. Okay, he did not take a look to the inside. The yellow line is there. He can't go to the inside. What are you talking about? Look at Christian. Look at Chandler Smith, who has gone to the outside. The move that he can make, the move that he is making. Can he? I would excuse at this point just getting to the point of saying like, oh, look, here he comes. Can he get there? Does he have enough time?
Continues to push Brett Moffitt.
He continues to push Brett Moffitt. Yeah, he continues to push Brett Moffitt because he can't make a move. And Chandler Smith ducked out there, and he's trying to get teamed up here, but it's not working.
Moffitt with the win at Talladega.
Weak. Bad, very bad. And this is the most galling thing to me about this is people are bringing up like Vince Welch, like, oh my gosh, we didn't know how good we had it with Vince Welch. No, Vince Welch would have been terrible in this too. The answer to this isn't going back to what also didn't work. Just my goodness, we can't be doing that. So again, just where is
Smith pushing the 34?
And look, this other thing, I mean, I cued this back a little bit. You also have this happening back here if you want to say something about it. I mean, Corey Heim is too far back to really do anything, but you got Nick Sanchez and you got, Hocevar there behind him, or is that, looks like Lawless Allen, I guess. It's got the Auto Park It logo. So, but yeah, again, or I guess that's Hocevar down there. So, but yeah, and again, all of this I've described, and we haven't gone into the Truck Series broadcast yet, but the other aspect of this too is there is so much you could say about Brett Moffitt in this case. Again, the fact that, and I heard this from source, that this truck that Brett Moffitt was driving, not only did this deal just come together within about the last month, that it wasn't originally going to be planned, the fact that Front Row Motorsports hadn't entered two trucks before, the fact that this race in 2013 in the Cup Series saw them finish 1-2 with David Reagan and David Gilliland. A lot of things you can bring up on top of it. You get, this is also Zane Smith's backup truck from Daytona. It was the backup truck they had this year, and it was the primary that Zane Smith won with in the 500 last year. Probably not too surprising of a fact, given the fact that there's only a couple of these super speedway races, although Atlanta does kind of change the complexion of things a little bit. But that's kind of a story too. I thought that was interesting. You don't have to bring all that in, especially if we're this close to the finish line, but something to bring up the fact of this being a new team. I mean, well, not really. I mean, they did struggle with this a little bit in the early broadcast because it's not really a new team necessarily, but it's the first time that Front Row's really entered two trucks. And I think you could talk about their own super speedway prowess and them building on their experience and what momentum this means for Sunday's race, which ultimately did come true because we saw all three of the Front Row cars at least one point have a tremendous race out there.
He takes a look to the outside. Ben Rhodes takes a look to the inside. He hangs on, continues to push Brett Moffitt.
I mean, Yeah, I mean the other problem with this call here, like continues to push Brett Moffitt. It's almost like you don't know you're coming to the finish line. Like you think there's going to be another lap left in this too. So again, I don't know who is directing these people. Like how can they not see this? Do they not? I mean, do they not just do like a football team and like take the footage? I mean, this is like being on like, you know, the, what was it? Was it the Broncos that lost the 70-20 game and like not look at film on Monday and just say like, well, let's see where we went wrong. Like, it's like, you know, it's like, no, it's like, oh, let's just pretend that was fine and then move on to the next week. It's like, no, you can't do that. You know, and I do think it's because people don't think this is a problem. And I do think that the other reason is if there is any kind of meeting after this, they're not doing this. They're not going through this. It's not like it would take that much time. So where are we with this? You know,
3 wide.
See, 3 wide. Okay, yeah, cool, 3 wide. But the problem is you also have Eckes getting shaken out of line. So again, I'll let me mute this and just try something here. So here we go. White flag in the air. Can Christian Eckes come back from his disappointment at Bristol last week? Not if Brett Moffitt has anything to say about it. He throws the block. Moffitt moves down to the inside. Eckes with no help. He's going to drop back. It is down to Moffitt and Smith. Moffitt with a big run down the middle lane. Here he comes into turn 3. Can they get to the inside? And yes, they barely get in front of him. Moffitt with the lead on the inside lane. Outside lane can't get the move, but here comes Kligerman. Kligerman wants his second win at Talladega. He tries to go to the outside, but he has no help. Can Corey Heim get there? Can anybody make a move? And here comes Chandler Smith. Can Smith get to the outside? Can he get to the line by the finish? Here they come, and it is Moffitt, your winner at Talladega. Not that hard. Again, wordy on my end, because I'm not just going to be one person in the booth. There's going to be other people in there. But again, I would like to think that there would be enough in there where if I pause, I saw somebody mention this earlier, you can have a situation where you could, if you pause, you lose your turn. I like the way that, so who said that? That was a great way to put that. Just kind of bring that in and do that. Okay. They're tape delayed because the truck broadcast is at the Charlotte studio, not the track. Okay, fair point. But again, work with that. If that's a limitation, they should be able to make that work. It's absurd. And if it's a situation where they're responding to stuff and it's all out of whack, that's even more of a reason for them to be at the track and not at the studio. So no, I'm sure there's a whole laundry list of excuses that they would have for this, but I don't get it. Because this is one of those things where it's easier to do it correctly than it is to do it badly. I really do feel that way. Again, and I'm not saying what I did there was perfect either. If I would listen to that, I would want to listen to my own thing and say, oh, it's like, man, I probably shouldn't have said this, or I probably should have shut up there, or I probably should have noticed this. How did I miss that happening? I would like to think that I would be very critical of my own work. And I just don't sense that. I think that it's just every week they just take the same approach and they do it the same way. And it's like, it's the minimum level of it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, they need to be at the track to begin with. I mean, is it really with the millions of dollars that gets thrown around to build like some crazy studio that you could change any digital graphic behind you? Is that really more expensive than a plane ticket? I get that, I get that a lot of that stuff is a mess, but I mean, you're covering sports. The concept of having people that aren't there, it's not like it's Formula One where, again, Formula One had remote broadcasts that were really good. I think we've talked about that on here before too, Bob Varsha and the work that they did to have like a local broadcast and have it synced up with what's actually happening. And that's like, again, something halfway around the world. That's like almost closer to the way that a sim race would play out these days in their play-by-play. So I don't know. I don't know. It's so frustrating because I'm sure there are so many people out there that are not in the immediate system. And somebody brought this up as a very good point too, that I think that they usually sample from the people that they already have. They're not going to go outside the tent. They're gonna kind of shuffle people in. They'll probably bring in pit reporters to be broadcasters, like they did with Jamie Little, who is, and again, I want to be very clear on this too. She's a fantastic pit reporter, but there's no difference between this and other broadcasters just didn't quite fit in there. I think of Rick Allen when they had him on pit road at New Hampshire, and he just looked completely out of his depth. Like he just didn't know what he was doing. He didn't look comfortable, and it was terrible. You feel bad for the guy. I just think they just didn't find the right place to put him. I think Rick Allen, his best aspect is, again, being a host. I think with him in the Cup Series broadcast, and we'll probably pull up some stuff from the Cup Series race here too. I'm sure all this is still getting loaded as we're doing the show here, and maybe we'll pull some Cup clips up here and kind of analyze those too. But that's where it needs to improve. That's where it needs to improve. You need to put people where they fit in. Again, I know Chris Myers. I made a comparison with Chris Myers before on this show, where, again, somebody that's good at being a host, but maybe not the best at play-by-play. I know Chris Myers does football play-by-play, and he's solid at that. I think that you could probably get away with being more of a host type if you're a Howard Cosell type or something like that, and getting it. And again, just having just iconic moments. But I don't think it's the same in NASCAR. I think NASCAR is a very different beast. And because you have so many different groups of reporters there, they don't always get along. I remember Dr. Jerry Punch did a great job calling Dale Earnhardt's final win at Daytona in 2000. But by the time 2007 came around, I think the direction wasn't right. And there was something about his play-by-play that wasn't as good. And I don't think it was anything on Dr. Punch's part. I think it was just that they wasn't getting the right direction, or maybe the people he was working with, it wasn't as natural and it just didn't work out. And it was unfortunate, and then you did have a bunch of changes there, bring Alan Bestwick in, Marty Reed, some of these others in there, but you got to try something different. If things aren't working, you got to try something different. But the first step you got to realize is that it's not working to begin with. I really don't get it. So again, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. I'm sure there's lots of other people that were talking about this. I'm glad the discussion was very thorough on this. I mean, I'm glad it's building up. Maybe we're getting there. Maybe we're getting to a point where they can look at this more critically. But I think it does have to. And I made a comparison, and somebody actually corrected me on this, and I thank them for correcting me on this. I said that in the YouTube era, where everything is about short clips and listening to things, imagine if you just played like a 10-second clip of that, and like you got visuals that are really good, but you got audio, the play-by-play that's just terrible. And there were several people calling this out here. That would be a real problem, and that probably is a very real problem, because you have to, and the correction the person made is it's even more important where you have TikTok, where you have YouTube Shorts, where you have Facebook clips. That's so important, because now you're dealing with clips that are way shorter than this. I mean, this is 57 seconds. How long are YouTube Shorts usually? They're about this long, or are they even shorter? They're like 30 seconds. I haven't done any of that. I really need to start doing that on my channel. But, this is, it's so important, because you play a short clip of this, and I always say, the broadcasts are the best advertisement for the sport. You don't need to make a multi-million-dollar commercial. You don't need to bring in a bunch of celebrities and say, hey, I'm a NASCAR fan too, and put them in a jacket or something like that. You don't have to do that. The product is the broadcast and the action and the colors and the sights and the smells, and the broadcast is part of it, and they cannot wipe their hands of that and say, oh, no, we're not that important, and you don't like us, just listen to the radio. No. That's not the way this works. That is an insult to everybody that has ever picked up a microphone or a headset or whatever their system is and stepped out there to do the play-by-play of this, whether it was Ken Squire or Bob Jenkins or Eli Gold or any of these others. It's terrible. It's terrible. And to the others that are trying to get in that position too. So, we will, as Tony Stewart told his pit crew in 2005 when they were having a terrible season, and then he bought a flag at when he was going to Sears Point, and they won that race, and the team credited that flag to what actually kind of caused them to rally here. And it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but basically the flag said, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And, you know, obviously meant to be humorous, not serious. They're not going to be assaulting their own crew members. But, you know, again, these segments will continue until the broadcast improves. And we'll do it every week if we have to. I'm fine with that. And we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it needs to be handled, because I do think, and it's like the one thing that's just, there's been a lot of positive momentum in the sport. There's a lot of it there, but there's such a narrow window to it because everything is in cycles and people only have so much attention to focus on one thing at a time, whether it's sports or movies, or there's so many entertainment options. It's like, if we could just get that one last puzzle piece in there, it might just be enough to kind of get us a little bit more staying power. You know, maybe bring in more people that are, you know, outside the typical, you know, demographic in the sport. I think it would be great. I think it would be, and it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. Any one of you guys in here could do what I just did here, and I'm sure, or could analyze this clip and pick things out of it too, just like anybody else. We all see it. I mean, you know, so that's where it needs to be. And again, so I do hammer on this a lot, and I know some people tune out and all that, and I get this reputation of being too negative on social media about it, but it's important. It's important. And it may not be, it's not the biggest thing in the world. It's not the most important thing out of the world, but it doesn't have to be, because that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to change the world here, folks. We're here to talk about racing. We're here to talk about what's good, what's bad, and what could be made better. And we're all a part of that. So if you're cool with that, I've got no problem pulling it up. We may pull up another clip here a little bit later in the show, but we'll talk more about, we got a ton to talk about with the Truck Series race here, so I definitely want to kind of get into that too. So we'll get into that. Let's bring back that. So I got I almost was looking over here because I thought I had the results posted up here. So again, Brett Moffitt, awesome storyline on what was, the best of times and the worst of times for the front row team. I know it's listed under Josh Realm as the entry, but that was undeniably a front row team. I don't know if they used Josh's owner points in there, but I'm not sure if that would really be that much of a help because the 34 team didn't really have very good owner points. I have to look into that more. That my source didn't talk to me about that as much. But still, you know, again, a tremendous effort there for that team. It was cool that they had a throwback scheme to when Moffitt drove for Front Row in 2015. Gosh, I can't believe that's been almost a decade ago. I was thinking back to when he took over for Joe Nemechek. I think that was the same winter when Team Extreme Motorsports got their cars stolen from their hauler in Atlanta, and they found it in the woods. Crazy time in the sport. I still think the 500 that year, even though not everybody's a Joey Logano fan, I thought the racing we saw in that 500 was some of the best racing that we've ever seen in that race. 3 wide battles, and it wasn't just 3 wide, it's 3 wide. It's like, this is the entire field really just testing who's going to blink first. Thrilling stuff. You know, as critical as people get about that entire season, I think it really did have its positive aspects too, and that was certainly one of them. But Brett Moffitt, hearkening back to that, pulling off his first victory in 3 years since back in 2020 when he was going for the championship at GMS Racing. Great effort for him. Ben Rhodes, Dean Thompson. Hard luck, Dean Thompson finally gets another top 5. I mean, my gosh, that guy is absolutely, he's still in contention for the NASCAR championship. In fact, with now Homestead coming up here, because we had a different last place finisher again in terms of Brian Dozit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We haven't got into that yet. We're in a situation here where pretty much anybody in the top 10 still could be the NASCAR Truck Series champion. I might have to print out like a ton of different certificates when we go to Phoenix here in just over a month from now. It could be really crazy. It could be a situation where we really got to pay attention to where everybody else in the field is finishing, and it's not simply going to be a matter of who's finishing in last place. It could still be a toss-up. We very nearly had that in the Xfinity Series last year, where it came down to JD Motorsports teammates Bailey Curry as well as Brendan Poole. If Poole had finished a little bit worse, that title I would have called it prematurely that Weatherman had that Curry had the championship in that one. So it could be another situation. Xfinity is very close to that too. they got more races than trucks, so it's possible we could have a breakaway. And then Cup Series, it's almost, well, again, there's too many races for even BJ McLeod to lock that one up, too, at the same time. So we'll see where all that shakes out. But Dean Thompson in third in the race, Chandler Smith in fourth. This is where we talk about the locking bumpers thing. We didn't really see as much of that in the clip, but it definitely was happening earlier in there. I think it's a stupid rule. I think it should go away. I think it's pointless. What is it about locking bumpers we can't? If we could, I don't get the closest rationale that I've heard in these broadcasts, and I think they're really honestly pulling it out of thin air, is like saying, oh, well, these drivers, they're too inexperienced to bump draft. It's like, okay, let me get this straight. They're experienced enough to race these trucks or Xfinity cars, because it's in that series as well. They're experienced enough to race these vehicles. They're experienced enough to race at these tracks. They're experienced enough to race against these other drivers for the full distance of the race. They don't have to be starting parks or pull off the race. They're experienced enough to do all that. They're experienced enough to earn points. They're experienced enough to earn prize money. They're experienced enough to be licensed to even show up at the track. But you mean to tell me that these drivers are not experienced enough to bump draft, that they can't lock bumpers? That's stupid. It's stupid. It's a complete contradiction. And the other problem is, it's completely unenforceable. Because in the last 5 laps of this, and you better believe at the very end of that, I think we actually did see some of this in the broadcast too, when we did the play-by-play there. They can't stop locking bumpers, because who's going to back off when you're trying to win the race? You're going to have your foot all the way to the floor. You're going to try to go the fastest you can. You're going to, it's down to you and the other guy. And then you have this playoffs thing on top of it, where you got playoff guys that are trying to get in by 1 or 2 points. It's absurd. It's never going to work, and it hasn't worked. And there's no real reason to have that. It doesn't make anything any safer. It doesn't make crashes less likely to happen. They still happen anyway. So it's stupid. So just get rid of the rule. It's completely pointless. I think it's stupid. Under the letter of the rule, as it stands, should Chandler Smith be penalized for locking bumpers? Yes, absolutely. It was flagrant. He was absolutely pushing people to the front of the field, and he did for several laps. Now, I think when he's dropping back through the field, they probably thought, okay, well, no big deal. He's not going to win the race. We're not going to have to strip a win away from him because he did a lot of pushing. But yeah, it's another rule that should just go away. Just like freezing the field on the last lap of the race, when they can actually safely get to the finish line, and just like our good buddy, the yellow line rule. And, all 3 of which are always a factor in these super speedway races one way or the other. So, yeah, I think, yes, he should have been penalized under the rule. And yes, the rule should be completely eliminated because it's stupid. I think both those things can be true, and I think both those things are true. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. So Corey Heim rounds out the top 5. Daniel Dye with the 43 truck. We had the news about him going to the McNally team next year. So he's going to still run the 43, which is interesting. I wasn't sure how much that was a GMS thing or not, but we'll see how that shakes out. Nick Sanchez in 7th. We got definitely more to talk about him. Haley Deegan in 8th. Parker Kligerman drops back to 9th. I got to say, I'm glad he went for it. We saw in that clip there as how close he came. I'm glad he went for it. You got to go for it. The win's right there. Charlie Henderson's team has been very good. They've put together some great super speedway trucks as well. He's had kind of an off year this year in the truck series, I got to say, but he's really been bouncing back there, and this was another good indication there. And then, yes, Lawless Allen in the top 10 ahead of his teammate Hocevar, so really impressive. Jack Wood had a penalty early in the race, was one of your contenders for last place there. Brett Holmes looked like he had a really good piece until he got involved in one of those accidents, unfortunately unable to come back and pull off the win that he really did earn last year as the first truck to reach the finish line. That's the other rule that really needs to be re-examined here. Going back to the back of the field here, it was the results seemed to indicate that it was pretty quick, but we did actually have a lot of different problems for other teams at the back here. Brian Dozit is listed out with handling problems. However, I did talk with a source on that team that confirmed that it was an electrical issue on the 28. I don't know exactly where handling came from on that, but the truck had the hood up on pit road. Steve Toronto did a great job on posting pictures of the truck there. I'm mentioning him because Credit to him, of course, for the picture that was posted in the article, which was posted earlier today after we went to the West Series race yesterday. But Brian Dozit, the FDNY Racing and Jim Rosenblum effort, ends up finishing last also for the first time since 2020, and also at Kansas, which is also the site of where Moffitt got his most recent Truck Series win. I don't think it was the same race, but the same track for sure. So there was that. I think it was a doubleheader that weekend. I remember listening to the radio broadcast of this because I was still working at the emergency room at that time, and that was a storyline from there. But Brian Dozit finishes in last place. Jason White had all kinds of problems with his truck there, was off the pace, had to go to pit road and get repairs in order to reach minimum speed. Apparently he did, because he did end up finishing the race under power, about 11 laps down, but did manage to stay out there. He was very scary. He had a kind of a close call there on the backstretch where the field caught him, and unlike Derek Cope's situation in the duels a couple of years ago where he was on the apron, in this case, White was in the very high lane, and everybody had to really shift around him like he was an actual literal chicane there. That could have been a very dangerous situation, and given what did unfold in the race, that's definitely something to talk about. Jake Garcia was your last place runner before any of this happened, because Garcia had a clutch problem, kept him on pit road, missed the start of the race, had to go to the garage area, came back out, did climb up to finish in the 29th spot because of the accidents that did happen later in the race there. But Brian Dozit, during all of that shuffling there, did come down to the garage area with the electrical problem and did end up with the last place finish here in the number 28 entry. But that team will return at Daytona. I did talk with my source on that, so they're excited to be coming back out there. David Gilliland in the bottom 5 in the 35th spot, and this was the first of 2 very serious accidents during this race that definitely have to be mentioned. 1 year removed from Jordan Anderson's terrible fire that left him with a lengthy recovery that he's still working on even today. You did have David Gilliland and Stuart Friesen's accident. Friesen came out of his truck visibly in pain, was checked at a local hospital, and was released about late last night. So good to hear reports on that. But then the other accident that happened a bit later, 26th place, the hard luck driver, I would have to say, of this year's Truck Series campaign, even into his ARCA campaign, would be old Greg Van Alst there. Had a savage hit to the outside, very similar to what we saw with Austin Dillon in the Cup Series race just today, but broke a vertebrae that was released from the hospital today, but at the same time, I'm sure it's still a bit of a recovery. We'll see what the other story is as to what his plans are the rest of this year. He was locked in to run this truck the rest of the season. The Truck Series returns to action in Homestead, not this weekend for the Charlotte Roval, but I believe the weekend after. So we're coming down to the end of this season here. But scary situation for both drivers. As much as we saw with the issues with the next-gen car, the dangers of the track is not limited to the next-gen. It could be just as much of a problem with the Truck Series guys or the Xfinity or anything else there, too. But glad to hear that both those drivers were checked and released from the hospital here. But for Van Alst in particular, hopefully he's having a good recovery there at the same time. Again, scary situation there. A lot that these drivers put on the line for these races here, and it could be a real hairy situation for any of these guys out there. Looking at other drivers throughout the field, it got to be very physical towards the end, again, as it usually is. Garrett Smithley kind of snuck through with a decent finish there. The Randy Young's effort there, finishing in the 15th spot. But again, other drivers there did not have a good day there. We didn't even talk about Zane Smith. And, of course, the other side of the coin there for Front Row Motorsports afternoon, we definitely have to talk about the situation on pit road where Zane Smith came down pit road, locked up the brakes. And again, these crew members, I was describing this as like, it's like stepping out in the middle of freeway traffic. And I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration. It seems like it's real slow compared to how fast these cars and trucks are on the track. But still, I mean, you're going out there and you got your helmet, your gloves, and your pads and all that. But you're not designed to be encountering, to have to jump over these cars or trucks. But the tire carrier for the Truck Series team there definitely found himself in that situation. Heads up move to make sure that he let go of those tires and focused on kind of jumping there. Did cause some damage to the truck, but of course that's a distant secondary interest to making sure he was okay. But tremendous. He got back on his feet, picked his radio back up, continued the stop, was working today in the Cup Series garage there for Colleague Racing on top of it. Looked like some fans came out and supported him as well. A tremendous story there at the same time. But again, just like the other drivers and team owners and other people that are really involved in the sport, they put their lives on the line, and especially anybody that hops over that wall. And anything can happen at any moment. You got to be ready in that instant. And this is what these guys train for, and they do their best to prepare for it. But yeah, they're brave for doing it because it could very easily be a difficult situation. You think about any of those other pit road accidents from NASCAR's past, what's created the speed limit on pit road to begin with, the fact that the crew members wear helmets and wear fire suits now, it's an ongoing safety procedure just like anything else. And that's another part of it. But I'm glad he's doing okay. Gave a great interview after all of that, which was a crazy deal there, but good to see. There were comments relating to this incident because, of course, Zane Smith after this continues to come back out there trying to get a decent run. Transmission starts to slip. He has to go into the garage area, and that puts him in a very bad situation here where now he's really got to pretty much win his way in at Homestead to make the championship four and try to defend his championship from last season. Difficult situation to find yourself in. I think he can step it up. I do think Ty Majeski is going to be very difficult to beat in that race, and it may come down to the two of them. I think it's going to be must-see TV when we get to that race for sure. Not to mention the fact that at the other end of the field, it's going to determine I don't think anybody's going to be able to lock up the NASCAR Truck Series championship, but we could very well at least winnow the field down to maybe about a dozen different drivers that we'll have to print certificates for our Phoenix coverage there coming up. But the thing I wanted to bring up from this was there were a lot of concerns as well about the interview that Zane Smith did with the FS1 booth. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of this, so I don't feel it's appropriate to be that critical of them for this in particular. Clearly, Zane was in a position where, he's not happy about being in a situation where he may have to win in the end. He may not be able to. You may see a pretty abrupt end to what was, again, another very promising championship season from winning at Daytona at the beginning of the year. But it sounds like, that they actually do. They don't just literally just, sit there by the radio and just thumb the button and say, hey, hey, Zane, how's it going? It's like, oh, I'm sorry you're out and, doing all that. I'm sure they actually worked through the PR department. It sounded like that was a discussion there, that they actually do get approval before they would even do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't even try to do it. So I'm not going to be critical of the folks in the booth there on that because, again, there may be some actual complexities to that I'm not aware of. This leads us to the other story from the Truck Series race yesterday. We got to talk about the Matt Crafton and Nick Sanchez deal. So more details on this are still coming in. I don't really still feel like getting too far into this, but one of the accidents that happened during the Truck Series race is you had an incident between Matt Crafton and Nick Sanchez. Crafton ends up with some really serious damage, and he ends up parking his truck in Sanchez's pit stall and comes back out. After the race, video surfaces of a fight where we hear that it's between Matt Crafton and Nick Sanchez. We see Sanchez come back out. He's got blood coming from his face, a broken nose apparently, and, shouting at Crafton, and, words are exchanged and so forth. You don't get a good view of Crafton in the video. There's some people that are pointing out certain people in the crowd and so forth, that apparently the video starts after the confrontation of what had happened. But a crazy situation. I'm just as surprised as anybody else as to what will happen or what may happen if suspensions are going to be involved. Clearly, for Crafton, that would affect not only on a more direct route. Of course, you got the issues of where he is in the championship, you got where he is in his consecutive start streak and so forth. Not that those are the most important concerns. Those are just stories that would come up if they end up taking that bridge in the story there. But I think it's right that NASCAR looks into it for sure. I think as much as NASCAR likes having some controversy along the way, and and any kind of fight between drivers, and you got people that talk stuff at each other, I do think that NASCAR really needs to kind of figure out where they stand in all this. Do I think, I think especially if they've done a situation where, Denny Hamlin gets in trouble with points for just stuff that he says on a radio show on his podcast there. If you have an all out fight and you leave one of the guys bloodied, it's a bridge pretty far. But Crafton posted a statement earlier today expressing his side of it here to try to understand it. And I want to kind of bring it up on here too, because again, I think we're finally starting to get kind of some more detail on this at the same time. Where was it? I want to pull that up. Maybe we'll pull this up. Alrighty. Okay, so yeah, this was posted. Looks like I believe it was posted on Twitter. Or was it this? Here's what wasn't caught on video. Let's go to the double screen here. So we'll kind of get this and we'll look at this here at the same time, and then we can kind of surmise from there. So again, here's what wasn't caught on video. First, let's address the sucker punch, which was what was alleged by Nick Sanchez to begin with. Before the camera started rolling, I approached Nick and said, "Hey." When he turned around, I said, "What the?" Which he looked right at me and threatened me. That's when it all went to hell. I had his attention. Words were exchanged, all before anything physical took place. So I did not sucker punch the guy. There may not be video, but there were plenty of eyewitnesses. Okay, so well, let's just read the whole thing. Second, what people don't take into account is that he all but sucker punched me at 200 miles an hour. The way he pushed my truck gave me no ability to get out of the situation. He was told multiple times during that race the way that he was pushing people was going to cause a wreck and get people hurt. There is a consistent pattern of certain drivers having a lack of respect on the track, and it was time for someone to say something. Am I proud that it got physical? No. But last time I checked, everyone on that track is a grown adult. If a man looks at me and threatens me, I am going to react, especially when tempers are already flared from being wrecked on the track. I apologize to my team, my sponsors and partners, my family, and the NASCAR community for the negativity and taking attention away from a good day of racing at Talladega. So in this, Crafton is certainly describing it's like, okay, well, yeah, he was in the altercation, so I don't think we need to cross the bridge about like, oh, was he even there? I think we're pretty far past that. Clearly, he was upset with the way that he got eliminated from the race. It did seem like it was a bit later. It was like well after the race had finished, not like right after the wreck happened. So, the way all that played out. I can't help but think in reading this, I remember that Norm Benning had some problems with Nick Sanchez and the way that he was racing him back at the Bristol Dirt Race earlier this year. So again, there could be some other things that are happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of. But, again, you clearly don't want somebody, you don't want somebody getting bloodied in a fight. And so you, at the same time, you also don't want somebody that's like, shouting death threats at somebody else either. I think that there's some latitude you could certainly give Nick Sanchez in this case, that as somebody that's getting, in a fight that much, you could excuse the fact that the person's going to be upset, to say the least. But again, and I don't want to speculate too much into that because, there's other things you could say about the extent of injuries and so forth. It seemed like he was able to get patched up pretty well at the infield care center there. But, it's just a mess. I feel like we're still not getting the full story here. I'm glad, we at least have some to work on here. But as to what NASCAR should do to one or either of them, I don't really have a firm take on that. I know everybody's going to pretty much be in their own sandcastles on that, and I'm sure that'll be the way that's going to play out. But, they need to do something. I mean, is this the same as like, it's unfortunate to have to split hairs on things of this nature. I'm sure that NASCAR is, whatever it happens, they're probably going to penalize somebody and then still play this in their highlight reels next race out at Homestead and talk about the pressure of the championship and, what all these drivers deal with. It's always a kind of a double-handed thing on this because they know that it's an entertainment business and they know that undoubtedly this fight in that clip, I'm sure, got a whole lot of, I don't know how many hits it got, but it got a ton. So, that's the kind of stuff that happens. You don't want a situation where drivers can't confront each other and settle their differences. But what are the limits there? So I don't know. It's a messy situation. I hate that both of them are involved in it. I don't like it for either of them. I don't really want to take a side in it. And I know that sounds like, it's straddling the fence there, but again, I still feel like we don't have the full story here. I think we got some pretty convincing evidence that means it should be looked into, but I'm satisfied enough that it is being looked into, and I guess we'll all find out together this week, whatever the situation is going to be. So yeah, that would be a different part of it. But yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. So, pretty wild weekend at Talladega in general. I mean, in terms of the action that we had in the Cup Series race, pretty wild on the Truck Series side to have that on top of it. I think we just barely even scratched the surface on anything else from the race there too. But Ryan Vargas, I was heartbroken for him. He had a good run out there. Ended up getting involved in the Brett Holmes accident, dropped a bit further back in the pack, especially coming back from the Three Friends deal in Germany. We got the back-to-back top 10s there in the Whelen Euro Series. Really shows just how dynamic he's been between these different teams that he's running. Very reminiscent of the next story I want to kind of talk about here. So what I'm wearing here today, kind of a little bit of show and tell, but not really. Wearing the shirt from the All-American Speedway last night. Check that out. Our other riders, Ben Schneider and William Saki, usually cover more of the lower divisions here. But it just so happened that the ARCA Menard Series West was in town at Roseville for the All-American Speedway last night. Put on a really good show. I know that on the race results, and I don't know what it looked like on TV, it seemed like it was pretty much just a complete thumping of the field there by Caden Honeycutt. But especially for a deal where Honeycutt wasn't even announced as a driver until midway through the week, where he had just run the most recent Truck Series race at Bristol. And he did mention during talking with him here that he's going to be running the Truck Series race at Phoenix for Randy Young's team in the 0-2, which is great because he got a top 10 for the on-point effort there last year. He's got a lot coming up, and apparently now has locked up a ride in that 17 entry there for the rest of the ARCA Menard Series West season, which will pick up again at Las Vegas in a couple of weeks. But I thought it was a very entertaining race. I've only seen a few West Series races, certainly when they come out here to Sears Point, and then also the Las Vegas Bull Ring have been the previous ones that I've seen. First time I've been to this particular track, 1/3 mile speedway out there. Beautiful facility. It's got a nice park around it there. Plenty of parking, very accessible. The crowd was very friendly. We got to meet our friends Jeannie Hunt over at Hunt's Race World, which is the big NASCAR souvenir store out my direction here. They actually share the facility with the Bill McNally shop over there in Roseville, which is basically a hop, skip, and a jump from there. That's where I picked this up. They had a great group out there that was really putting on a good event and really trying to put on the best show for the fans out there. And I think that even though Honeycutt dominated that race, he did not make it look easy. As a typical NASCAR event, you're going to have a lot of restarts out there. Sean Hingorani and the driver in the 16, one of the Reif brothers there, were really putting him to task. I think the battle that he had with the 16 about 80 laps into the race was probably the most thrilling battle there. It was, again, a matter of who was going to blink first and ultimately having the 16 slide sideways off the corner. Great battle out there. Really enjoyed it. And Caden's a good guy too. I did intentionally wear the shirt I picked up from his fan site there to the track there and showed him that, the autograph session. I haven't done a fan thing at a track in a long time. I usually just, work, do the media thing there. That wasn't really the plan going into this, certainly. Last Pro and I just kind of hanging out there at the track. But I couldn't resist even at the moment there to track the last place battle at the beginning, especially since we did have a couple of start and park entries the opening lap. So hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of bonus content there at the same time. But really enjoyed the All-American Speedway. They put on a great show out there, great crowd. Great experience out there. Would love to come back out there. They're apparently going to have a monster truck show there in October. They had a infield lit up banner. I guess it was like a big screen there, but they were kind of using it just an actual banner during the race, and they were doing a lot of promotions for that. I don't know if for those of you who watched the race itself, they did actually park a monster truck at the infield, which I was kind of a little wondering about. It looked like it was actually on something like a raised level, so it wasn't like something that you had to worry about cars spinning into at the same time. But yeah, enjoyed the race. Loved seeing the West Series guys out there, Takuma Koga and some of the other programs out there. Rod Nealand was in the race there, driving the 55. Unfortunately, it was a start and park about 4 laps into the race. But Nealand was the driver that you may remember from the video on this channel where they're trying to get the 68 car to start at Sears Point, and the crowd cheers and the engine fires up. Same driver, this time driving for another team in this particular race here, and pulled off the track early there. So, it wasn't really the plan to do any media work there for that, but just kind of having fun with it. I'm glad I did. I'd love to be able to do check out some more action down there as well, so maybe we'll do some more stuff like that at the same time. But, pretty cool weekend in terms of the short track action here. I mean, you had Caden Honeycutt winning in the ARCA West race. Bobby Pierce won I think a dirt late model race somewhere. We had Landon Huffman winning at another race in the car that he decorated as an Oldsmobile. Love that paint scheme. Glad to see him still running it out there. So a lot of cool underdogs pulling off wins here. I thought we were going to kind of keep that momentum going with Riley Herbst in the Cup Series race there, especially after Brett Moffitt's win in the Saturday's Truck Series race. But all things considered, some pretty cool storylines along the way. I know I'm not a big fan of Cup Series guys running in the lower series, but again, I don't apply that same thing to Truck Series guys or Xfinity guys. They need all the track time they can get. And it's especially cool for Honeycutt when he mentioned that it was the first time he was out here in California. When I talked to him before the race, he said he didn't really get a chance to see the sights. He was mostly just around the track there at the time. But yeah, it sounded like he had a great time out there, and I hope he got a good warm welcome from the fans. It was packed. I don't know how well it showed on camera, but it was pretty much sold out at that event there too. But they did a great job with the crowd control. It was no problem getting in and out there, and both Lastbro and myself had a great time out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed some bonus content on that too. We got some kind of pictures there at the same time. RD Foxy, your comment, yeah. So tracking the last place battle is just reflexive at this point. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think if I ended up at like the Grand Prix of Monaco, I'm sure it would do the same thing. I would just be like tracking like, okay, who's coming by this time? It would be something like that. Especially at a short track where you have like for that. But that's always pretty consistent. I've always had like ones where I look for like certain teams. And I don't follow that series as closely. There were some drivers in the circuit that I followed that have kind of cycled back out of the sport there. But yeah, it's still cool to see. So that's kind of another part of it. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I got questions about Talladega Nights. I'm okay with it. I think I mentioned this before. Like first time I saw Talladega Nights, and it was cool that they had the throwback paint schemes. I think that the team had a lot of fun with it. I'm certainly not going to poo-poo all over that if they're having a great time with it. I hope they did. And actually, it seems like Priest actually had a pretty decent run out there, getting a decent finish. I wasn't really impressed with that movie to begin with. I thought it was just kind of silly and kind of facile. I think that a lot of movies about NASCAR tend to portray the sport in a rather ridiculous light. Even Days of Thunder is guilty of this to a certain extent, where, they kind of have a Humpy Wheeler character and they just kind of have him as just being a real hard ass, and it's not at all the way Humpy would be, things like that. And there's some absurdity in there too. I still think it's easily the best depiction of the sport. I still think it's the way that it makes the sport look epic. I think probably the second best epic depiction of the sport, ironically, would be Herbie Fully Loaded. And I know not everybody's a Lindsay Lohan fan, but I think that's probably the second best NASCAR movie in recent years, at least. That may surprise some of you, but maybe that'll be a video for another time. I know I've referenced it in the Field Fillers one there too. But Talladega Nights has never really been my biggest favorite. I will say, though, my fondest memory of that movie was going to Bristol in 2007. We did a bus tour there, and we watched I think it was the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, and then we watched that movie on the way in there, and it just added to the ambiance so perfectly, and everybody was having a great time, and they were laughing at the movie, and I enjoyed it much more then. I think I enjoyed it more in the second viewing than the first. I don't know if I would have felt the same way if I was just watching it on my own at home versus having the context of that trip. But kind of when I see the movie, I kind of think more about that, which is fun. We haven't been to Bristol since then. We'd love to do it again one of these days, but that's something I kind of think of. So yeah, I think it's fine. We saw a couple of those schemes that Kurt Busch ran in the past. He ran the Wonder Bread scheme with Furniture Row. He ran the Cougar paint scheme with Phoenix Racing in 2012. That was pretty cool. But I think that was kind of a different way to look at it. But yeah. Yeah, if I'd ever get to attend the Monaco Grand Prix in a professional capacity, none of us could afford F1 tickets. Oh yeah, no doubt. No offense taken. Absolutely not. Look, I don't even have enough vacation hours to do a lot of this stuff there too. But we're going to figure things out for next season too. That's been kind of the big part of it there. So, I guess that's really most of the discussion there from the Truck Series and the Cup Series. And I definitely wanted to again mention the West Series deal here. Let me kind of check my notes here and see if I got anything else on here. Yes. Okay, good. I'm glad I wrote these down. So it was definitely not a slow news week in the sport. We have to definitely talk about these stories. You haven't addressed any of those, and I'm sorry if you guys are already kind of jumping on that. So first and foremost, the Hendrick number 17 team, the Xfinity Series team, I have very much voiced my opinion and my displeasure about the fact that they've entered this car to have Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott stroke their own egos and score easy wins. I still stand by that. I know not everybody feels that way about it, but what else am I supposed to think? It's a 17 car that's sponsored by Hendrick. You're not doing it for sponsors. You're not doing it for learning anything for Sunday because these are radically different cars. What are you doing it for? You're doing it for just scoring easy wins, and that's what I'm not impressed by. That's the consistent problem I've had with it. And one of the things that I've always pointed out when I talk about that car and what it's represented in NASCAR is the fact that it is completely incompatible with the spirit of running the number 17 as the car number, running Ricky Hendrick's number. When Ricky Hendrick was a development driver, again, through the family, of course, but, a development driver running in the ARCA series, winning that number in the Truck Series race at Kansas, I thought that it would be much more conducive to honoring the memory of Ricky Hendrick to put drivers in there to give them a real chance, maybe a chance that they would never really ordinarily have. I think it was antithetical to that to put somebody like Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott in there who doesn't need it, does not need it. It's pointless. It is a waste of effort. I am not impressed with start and win teams. I think they are the true threat to the stability of the garage area there. And then what happened, folks? I'm sure none of them watched this show. I am absolutely positive of that. And I'm sure I had zero role in any of this. But we had a wonderful news update that came up this week that not only we are going to have a young driver get his shot in top equipment who has been fighting in small equipment before, that being Raja Karuth, who's going to be running the car at Phoenix. Really cool this week that he was so excited about that deal that he got to Talladega and he's wearing his driver's uniform and he was making sure to buy a HendrickMotorsports.com hat, a Kyle Larson hat stuff, so he could kind of start celebrating and get ready for that. You just got to love the guy. Raja Karuth, I think, is another kid who's got a very bright future ahead of him. And this is going to be massive for him to run that car at Phoenix. He's been on the verge of a breakout this year in the Truck Series. Came very close to winning at Darlington, was very good at Kansas. And again, still trying to search for that first victory. He's now in a situation where, of course, GMS is closing up. What's his deal going to be next season? He's been running races for Tommy Joe Martin's team, being part of that organization's reorganization and getting some good runs out there. Getting this effort in this Hendrick car is going to be huge. I think that's going to be really big. It's going to be big-footed a bit by the championship, and I think that's going to be the one thing that's going to be very interesting about all this. But I think it's going to be a huge moment for him, and it's going to be exciting to see. I can't wait till we get out there and see how he performs in that car, because that is absolutely a race-winning car. We know that that's the case. We know that their Xfinity equipment has not missed a step. They probably took a bunch of Kyle Larson's Cup cars from that 2021 dominant season and put stuff together. But somebody's still got to drive it. So I think that is much, much closer to something that would, again, be, I think something that people can get behind. I think that would be a much better storyline to follow and give people the opportunity. Now, on top of this, much even closer before we even get to Phoenix, we have the Charlotte Roval this week, where who is going to be climbing in that 17 car? Boris Said. Boris Said, who has himself retired a couple times from the sport. I thought when he drove for Archie St. Hilaire and Watkins Glen, or when he drove for Circle Sport and some of these other small teams. You think about the road course specialists of the past, that you would have mid-tier or small teams that would get a big name, get a road course specialist in there to run a lot of those teams. Probably the best ride that Boris Said has ever had in his Cup Series or his NASCAR career was probably when he drove Jerry Nadeau's car that won the pole at Sears Point for MB2 Motorsports. Huge effort for him at that time. To go from that, you think about when across the aisle, you have Ron Fellows, who is like his arch rival there, friendly rivalry for sure between the two of them, is kind of the big road course specialist of the late 90s, early 2000s in particular. Fellows was, of course, a Chevrolet development driver. We heard about this. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the 500 Days episode or it's coming up. I think it's the upcoming one. We'll hear more about that. His development deal with Corvette at the time. He would always get the Chevrolet races. So he would get into DEI's car and he would run some races for them and have some good equipment. He would drive for Nemco Motorsports and they would have some very fast cars as well. But Boris Said kind of gets the shorter end of the stick. He'd always been driving for guys like Travis Carter. He would drive for, again, MB2 was probably the best equipment he had. That and the So Be No Fear team as well, of course. The effort that really was a complete cobbling together of a Ford team there with Frankie Stoddard and so forth. And the best runs that he's had has actually been with probably the biggest long shot of any of the teams he's driven for. But now at this time here, where he'd been retired from the sport, he gets pulled back in and he now gets to drive this Hendrick Motorsports entry. And again, a driver that's very much at another end of the career versus Raja Carruth, to have this opportunity. And to drive an entry that, again, a guy like Ron Fellows would probably be more likely to drive because he's a Chevrolet guy. It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And so I think it's going to be exciting for both of them to see how they perform in these cases here. So Boris Said at the Charlotte Roval this coming Saturday for the Xfinity Series race as that series returns. And then Raja Carruth for the championship race at Phoenix. Very cool. And I think I hope this is the start of something that Hendrick continues to do. I hope they don't fall back into this and say, oh, well, we got to have, Kyle Larson in there because, otherwise people aren't going to pay us this or whatever. Start bringing some of these guys in here and really give them a shot. Just give them a shot and see what happens. And, and maybe it could be something that can really help for a lot of these different guys. Do we have an update here, folks? Do we have an update? Do we have an update on our last place battles here? Okay, well, we'll jump into our news segment here in a moment, but we might have to, we're going to have to break in here with some breaking news. I'm seeing it in the chat here. Let's jump into it, folks. Let's jump right into it. Okay. I'm glad we're going to get to Kyle Busch and the KBM deal, and we'll talk about the Brickyard 400 here. I want to get into those too. We'll do that next, and then we'll do some trivia and so forth. But we gotta get to the breaking news here first. Okay, folks, let's go here. Let's pull up Pockrass's page. All right. What do we have here? Oh no. Here we go. All right, folks. Oh my goodness. Kevin Harvick, your runner-up finisher from today's Cup Series race at Talladega. Kevin Harvick has been disqualified for windshield fasteners not secure. This posted 4 minutes ago on Bob Pockrass's page. Disaster. I mean, my goodness. Yeah, and I like this first comment here from Rowdy70. Yeah, it's controversial enough, but we are 12 thousandths of a second from it being even worse. Yeah, no kidding. Can you imagine if you have this emotional victory and Kevin Harvick pulls it off here, and then he ends up getting disqualified and end up getting the win stripped away from him here rather unceremoniously. Massive. I mean, yes, he's already eliminated from the playoffs. This is no bearing on that. We'll see how it moves everybody up. Riley Herbst will get a 9th place finish. And then most importantly, We're not going to have the number 1 finish last if he's going to take the spot away from Ross Chastain. And Chastain will still be without a last place finish for the first time since 2012. Disqualification. Let's pull up, let me pull up some stats here in the meantime. We'll switch back over to the stream page here, and we'll see what the ramifications of this are going to be. Thank you for the heads up here in the chat. So we'll definitely address this. So this is, again, we'll do some, looks like we're going to do some rewriting of the article here a bit, but that's okay. I wasn't happy with my driver profile section I wrote for Chastain anyway, so this will actually probably make a better article. But we always, here at LastCar, whenever that happens, we use the and then approach. So we'll write out what happens. We'll prepare like what was going to be a Ross Chastain article. And then we'll have a paragraph that says, and then, and that's where you'll be able to tell where something else was written after the show here tonight. But this appears to be the case. So let's pull up some fun stats here. It sucks for Harvick. I don't really know what else to say. Did Reddit find out this? And we're back to the pucker and the roof that he had at Phoenix a while back, or this just came up? Windshield braces. What would actually be the benefit of that? I'm not sure what that would even mean. Okay, I'm looking through the wrong part of the alphabet here. So this would be the 4th last place finish for Kevin Harvick, the first since September 11th of last year at Kansas, where he crashed out after 33 laps. All 4 of these have been in the number 4 because he never finished last until 2018. So that would be a first there. Let's get to our Talladega statistics. Let's see here. I want to kind of pull this up. Sorry for the dead air here, folks, but we're live TV. We're going to improvise here a little bit, and we're going to see what we got. I want to kind of do some car number stats. We may actually update the article here as we're going. This would be the first last place run for the number 4 in a Cup Series race at Talladega since April 16th, 2000, Jeff Gordon's 50th win. The video that was actually the one that NASCAR Man posted earlier this week, the spring race at Talladega. Hamilton made 110 laps before an engine failure there. Have we not had, okay, hang on. Pull this up here. So Terry Labonte still stands alone as the only driver to finish last with the number 1 car. In a Cup Series. Sorry for the shaky camera here, folks. You got the camera right on top of the laptop here. Talladega since April 16, 2000, when Bobby Hamilton's number 4 Kodak Max film Chevrolet lost the engine after 110 laps at the Die Hard 500. It's interesting, the last time the number 1 finished last was also the Die Hard 500, back when it was run in July. So a little bit of a lateral change there, too. Have we had a disqualification for a last place finisher at Talladega? I think that would probably be Marty Robbins when he had the loose restrictor plate in his car. And there was a controversy over that. I think that would be the last time that's happened. Let's confirm. It probably has happened a couple times with the... Yeah, that would be the last time. May 7th, 1972. Let's see. Is the first last place finish of a Cup driver at Talladega by reason of disqualification since May 7th, 1972, and Marty Robbins. Let me get my note here. Make this bigger. Let's see. Oh, yeah, let me pull this up. When Marty Robbins deliberately allowed the restrictor plate to fall out of the carburetor of his number 42 1972 Dodge, surrendering a place finish. Gotta look that up, where he actually finished in the race. Yeah. So yeah, disqualifications at Talladega, not actually that common. Last time would be the one for Robbins in May 7th, 1972. There's a great video on YouTube that still talks about when Marty talks about the story, and he's visibly embarrassed as he's describing it. And I think what embarrassed him is that that NASCAR was going to give him a bunch of awards for being like a really good rookie contender and getting a bonus and stuff. And then he had to say, well, I mean, I kind of cheated on it, and then I guess NASCAR was pretty upset at him there for that. So, yeah, that's pretty much the only case. And that was a pretty extreme case. I mean, he was basically just, Marty Robbins was, again, the famous country singer turned race car driver there. He was definitely the driver that was doing it for fun, kind of a gentleman racer there, not looking to really win championships, kind of did just part-time, certainly ran Nashville for his home track and everything. Just wanted to see how fast the car would go. It was enjoying being fast for a bit. And actually, even in the race results, he still didn't finish on the lead lap. So it just shows how much faster teams like, the Pettys and the Allisons were back then. But it says something about that. But my goodness, the Kevin Harvick one, that's not ideal. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the memes are not ideal here. I don't know if we have any other disqualifications, but I should retweet that too. Where is it? Okay, come on. Let's get this pulled up. Like I say, we'll jump back into our news sections here. Yeah, well, stage results change. Yeah, that's true. That would be too. Let's see. Let's use this. Oh, hang on. Nope. This is incomplete. I need to do this. Here. I need to do this the correct way. Where is it? Alrighty. Okay, there it is. Done. Okay, well, got to make sure to retweet that one. Okay. Yeah, so, wow. Okay, well, probably just as well Harvick didn't make the next round of the playoffs. Well, it just figures. The best run he's probably had all season. Gets really close to pulling off the win and then gets disqualified there. So, could be the last change of the day. We'll see if there's going to be any appeal. So we may still have to hang on to the Chastain thing just in case. Or if they're even going to bother. I don't know, since they're not in the playoffs. I don't know, folks. That's gonna be one interesting one to find out. But yeah, thank you for the heads up on that for sure. Alrighty. Well now, so let's jump into this here. So we, if you have any other updates on that, feel free to break in. Oh yeah, the Hamilton Busch DQ. Yep, I guess that'd be the most recent time we've actually had one. The Johnson one at Charlotte was definitely a big one too. This affects the stage results too. Yeah. Is the rest of inspection over? I don't see one. I don't see one that says that Blaney's the winner yet. At least not on Pockrass's page. If that changes, feel free to break in. I don't mind the heads up. Alrighty. Okay. We'll kind of finish up with the news section here. I'll talk a little bit about other projects I'm working on here. We had a couple of updates on things this week, so I guess we'll jump into that. So a couple other news. We had the other news this week about Kyle Busch Motorsports, selling it to Spire Motorsports. But doggone it, Kyle Busch just can't stay away from the Truck Series. And of course, he's going to run some more races next season because of course he is. So, okay. Now it's not even your own team. Why? But okay. So on the surface of it here, Kyle Busch, I almost expected this to maybe consider happening last year with that just massive change that there has been where he switched from Toyota to Chevrolet. And the fact that, leaving Joe Gibbs Racing, I really wondered if there was going to be much future for Kyle Busch Motorsports because the expense of switching manufacturers must have been immense. What was lost and what was gained, and ultimately all of that going to Tricon Garage, and now David Gilliland's team is just suddenly like this much bigger version of itself here. I'm almost wondering with this news that came out if there was something with Spire or with Hendrick or with somebody that they helped in transitioning, to Chevrolet or Childress, really, of course, with him driving for Childress in the Cup Series. I don't know who had access to what. We don't really see Childress trucks out there anymore. But, excuse me. This is not a commentary on Kyle Busch Motorsports in general there. I know the team has done a lot of good in developing drivers in spite of the fact that Kyle Busch has insisted on stroking his own ego to run as many Truck Series races as possible when he was like the wunderkind even back in 2005. Yeah, I mean, I think for the future of his family, I'm sure he's more aware of his own finances or financial interests than any of us are. And I'm sure that's going to be the first priority right there. And of course, his son's racing career too, and what's going to become of that. So that's going to be interesting too. We get to Phoenix and it'll be the last race for Kyle Busch Motorsports before it basically becomes an extension of Spire. And Spire, on top of this, already buying up Live Fast Motorsports charter, but not getting the 78. So they're going to run the 78 next year. So what that means, if they're going to bring the 70 back or if they're going to bring the 07 back or whatever the effort's going to be. I just love all these constant discussions about, Spire Motorsports is completely separate from the management company. Like, it's not the same entity. It's not involved with the same people. It's not this, it's not that. And yet every one of these sales constantly goes through Spire. I know it sounds kind of tinfoil hat, but it's things can only be so much of a coincidence here with this, but at the end of the day, yeah, okay. I guess everybody's going to drive for Spire one day. Maybe that's where we're heading. I don't know. Kyle Busch is, Kyle Busch's team. Yeah, we've had development drivers through there from William Byron and Eric Jones and, any number of different competitors out there. It's had a tremendous legacy from the time that he was working with Billy Ballou in the years past and running that 51 truck and the other, ones they brought in, the 4, the 46 and so forth. It's a difficult situation. It did seem like this was going to be a transitional year. It seemed like once they had accomplished it, this is going to be a year where they were going to kind of build towards something more. But I guess the 100th victory was the big thing they wanted to accomplish. And now that they've done that, I guess the effort's already in place to transition it. But I have no idea where that's going to be next season and what things are going to look like in the Truck Series. That could have, I don't think it's going to have as big of an effect as him switching to Chevrolet already did this year. But that them missing is going to still be felt. It's just going to be a little bit different because this year when they had Jack Wood and Chase Purdy out there for a number of races, they've definitely not been as competitive as they've been as Toyota. And I think probably in a competitive aspect, Kyle Busch probably hasn't been too happy with having a drop-off in performance in that sense too. Trying to piece together sponsorship to keep things going, but not being the dang near crime syndicate that they were, especially with that 51 entry there. That'll be something to kind of work there at the same time. So yeah, we'll see how that shakes out, but I'm not sure. Enough of that. That's a boring story. I think honestly, there's not too much more I can really add to that. But the Brickyard 400 is coming back. Let's talk about that. The Brickyard 400 is back. You can run the oval. We're not going to do that stupid road course anymore. Great. I think we have reached a tipping point here where, okay, we've suddenly realized that there are other road courses in the world and we don't have to use an infield road course. And winning the Brickyard 400 is still a meaningful thing. And it's unfortunate that in the past, the Gen 6 car kind of made a mockery of that race, that we had several terrible races there. I still think it's stupid that they have the Xfinity Series there. I think they should be at IRP. I think bringing that back is a misfire. I agree with David Land's assessment of it, that the Brickyard 400 should be elite. It should be the thing that you should strive for. It should be the thing that should encourage more Cup teams to show up, because it should have a really big payout and be that challenging to actually qualify for. I think that's important. I think that's that's one thing that should be worked on there. But this is a good step. That first of all, they're running the oval. They're bringing it back next year for the 30th anniversary of the first Brickyard 400 in 1994. That they're calling it the Brickyard 400 and not some convoluted name. That PPG is involved in it, because it was the PPG Cup is what the trophy was called from the very inception of it. That they're recognizing the history of this event, which is nice, and not blurring it into just making it just another race. And you can start thinking again about drivers that haven't won it, like Denny Hamlin most famously, when he had the flat tire that put him into the wall and cost him a chance at what he felt like was really the best chance that he could win it. Drivers like Matt Kenseth, who through their own careers seemed like they would have been multi-time winners of that event, and didn't get a chance to pull it off there. They now have a chance. I don't see Kenseth coming out of retirement to do it, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. Juan Pablo Montoya is another one to bring up at the same time. And that pit road speeding penalty heard around the world that sent him, really just kept that as his white whale, where he wasn't able to quite accomplish winning that race there too. Rusty Wallace is another one too. It has its history. It may seem like saying something from 1994 has a lot of history is absurd, but it really does. And I've kind of come to miss it here too. And it's really interesting to see how the next gen car will perform at that track. I do think there's still safety aspects of the cars that need to be figured out, because Indianapolis, among what it has been more than anything else, is a track that suffers no fools. If you have, you could have an accident there that would be, already pretty serious at any other track, could be very serious there, which is why I think it takes a very particular breed of driver to compete in the Indy 500. And then to run the Brickyard 400, I think you'd be kind of viewed in the same breath too. But yeah, we seem to be reaching a tipping point where we're moving away from the infield road courses and giving these ovals another try and seeing what happens. Do I think we're going to be having Chicago come back in place of the Chicago street race? I don't think so. I think if it does happen, it'll be because local politics will screw up that race itself. And we don't know what's happening because we still don't have the schedule for next year. So where, what the potential of Chicagoland coming back, I don't know. But then you look at, having the fall race at Charlotte come back. There have been murmurings about next week at the Roval being the last time they run the Roval, and then bringing back the 500-mile race, the UAW GM Quality 500 or the Bank of America 500, as it was in later years. Are we going to come back to that? I mean, the Roval, it was well-meaning. It was a crazy experiment. I think that explaining it to Linda McDuffie during the JD book signing in 2018 was an interesting experience. She described it as going to be a hot mess. But it's had its own crazy moments. But it's such a sloppy mess at the same time too. If you think about the whole thing about Chase Elliott's bumper, if you think about cars driving straight on into that heartburn turn wall and stuff. I mean, these are entertaining moments. These are crazy moments. But do I think that necessarily makes it a really competitive race, or one that's like highly anticipated? I'm not sure. I don't know how to feel about the Roval anymore, honestly. But at the same time, do I think that a 500-mile race at Charlotte is necessary? No, because I think that kind of goes back to my thought about tracks should just have one date, and that should be the starting point to any kind of long-term view of the NASCAR schedule. I think a lot of tracks have had two dates simply because they've always had two dates, not because there's a reason they need to have them. And I think Charlotte falls into that too. It's a little bit better now because at least we don't have the All-Star race at Charlotte too. So we don't have 3 events there during the year. I thought that was always ridiculous too. But I think that's another thing that we could look at the same time. But we'll see. Maybe it turns out that way, but maybe not. And then the All-Star race at Wilkesboro is coming back next year. We did get confirmation of that. That's exciting. I was still hoping that they were going to do a points-paying race there. I'm not a points-paying race or nothing person. I can still see the utility of having it be at the All-Star race, and I think there was a lot of good that was accomplished this year. I know it's very easy to poo-poo all over that race and just say how terrible of a finish it was, and pretend to be surprised that Hendrick Motorsports had notes left over from 1996 that they could still apply to having the 5-car win there again. But again, the potential of a new surface is still out there. The potential of still having the Truck Series race there is great. I thought they put on a great show this past year, and that was a very highly anticipated event. It's too bad Kyle Larson had to come in there and ruin it. I think if you're going to be critical of Kyle Larson of anything, that would be one thing to look at. Don't be as critical about him dominating the All-Star race there. I think you could put we'll see what the format's going to be. I'm sure Junior's going to probably keep tweaking at the format there. Maybe they'll put, a caution clock or something in there to have the field bunched up more often. But again, I think it was still less surprising that it was strung out that way. I think Wilkesboro has traditionally not been, it's been a very physical track, but it's also been an endurance race. It needs to be longer. If anything, make the All-Star race longer. Make it 200 laps instead of 100. If you want to do something like that or whatever it was. Add more length to it. And I think that would also be a stepping stone towards it being a point race. I think as a point race, it'd be more interesting and don't have any stage cautions. Have a situation where it just keeps going and going. And then, you may have a race winner that leads 350 laps or 250 laps or something like that. But that's what makes that track special. It is a very difficult racetrack to get your hand around it. It's very much, it lends itself to dominant runs. And it's very rare that you have a situation like, the Ricky Rudd and Dale Earnhardt situation. That came in a race where Earnhardt had been a really dominant driver in it too. It's sometimes you have to outlast the track. And that's the same reason Darlington, I think, is one of the best measures of greatness in stock car racing. So I think that should be a factor in there too. But I'm glad it's still on the schedule. I think at this point, I'm happy with that. Whether or not we cover it next year, I don't know. Probably not. We're looking towards doing something in the summer next year, depending on when Sears Point is. I'd like to do another points race in another venue because we haven't done that in a while. So hopefully something will turn out there. Why is Rick Allen trending on Twitter? I don't know. Oh, the play-by-play call. Oh, goodness. Everybody's doing calls of Rick Allen here from different times. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just looking at some of these. Honestly, a really good call by the end. Okay, yeah. Maybe it's going to another Rick Allen. Maybe it's unrelated. Maybe it's just different. Who knows? Although I'm seeing a lot of comments here on that. I don't know. Weird. Alrighty. Well, we'll see. Maybe we should. Here, let's pull this on the big screen. We do have one of the finish? Where is the call for the finish?
Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick, Blaney.
Okay. Is that real? Was that really what happened? I have a feeling that's not real. Okay. If it wasn't real, good meme here by, who's this? Oh, shoot. What the heck is that? Where'd everything go? There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Something slipped. Switch screens here. Come on, let me credit the creator here. Oh, did BJ McLeod get a top 25? McLeod top 25 on Twitter. Okay, yeah, here we go. We got to pull it up again.
They're side by side through the tri-oval. Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick.
No, okay, yeah. I guess that can't be real. No, that's still too good. Yeah. Okay, that was the other finish there. No, everybody's having fun with it. Okay, yeah. Here we go. Well, where is the actual finish? In the interest of being fair here, where's the actual finish? Because I don't remember the call at all, so I can't really say anything about it right now. But we got a where we go. Talladega finish 2023. Okay, 1347. Yeah. This guy probably has just the finish. Oh, nope, hang on. Oh, no, this is replay. That's not replay. Hang on. Where's the actual one?
As we get ready for them to go up through the...
Oh, he almost...
If they can go, side drafting happening.
Okay, let's
But
get
again,
back.
will
Here we go.
Herbst be aggressive enough to be able to help this 12 get back toward the front of the field, back into the lead? Is he going to push Blaney hard enough down these straightaways to be able to clear this 12?
Okay, that's good, by the way. Dale Jr., good job on that.
The third line hasn't moved, but now gaining. Another car, we'll see if they can go. Side drafting happening up front. Blaney.
Okay, yeah, all right.
On the high side, Harvick on the inside.
Crispy, crunchy coating on the outside, sweet and tender chicken on the inside.
Through the trial will they go. One lap to go. Presented by Credit One Bank.
Oh, got to get that Credit One Bank ad in there. Oh, yeah. God forbid we forget to say that.
Oh, he almost spun the 12. Herbst into the back of Blaney.
That cleared Harvick. Harvick is clear of the 12. Now he's got to have to block both lanes.
The 12's going to...
Okay, I do remember that. That was good. I liked that. I liked when they described that. But again, who's not talking? It's Rick. It's like, come
A
on,
little
man.
momentum here. I think Harvick can hop back in front of the 12. Big run coming. The 12 to the inside.
Shuffles the four out. Now Blaney and Harvick down the backstretch for the final time and into turn three. Blaney with a push from the 24 of Byron. Here comes Harvick on the outside. Can the 36 get to the back bumper of the 4 and give him a big push? Momentum coming. They're side by side through the tri-oval. Blaney, Harvick, Blaney, Harvick. They spin behind him. It's going to be Blaney.
It's actually not too different for the beam, actually. I don't know. Is it going to be Blaney or will it be Harvick? Something like that, maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, yeah. See, this one here, like, yeah. I mean, we looked at the Truck Series one earlier and you had Phil Parsons. He's kind of carrying the heavy load here. I mean, this one here, you got entirely too many people in the booth. But, I mean, Junior's really solid. He's good. I like that he's describing the maneuvers here. And then they're kind of giving it over to Rick here for the last part of it. But Rick's kind of just locked up a little bit. It's like, okay.
Side. Can the 36 get to the back bumper of the 4 and give him a big push?
Okay. You know what? This is another thing. I'm just realizing listening to this. I don't like it when you ask me, why are you asking questions? You don't have to phrase it like a question. Oh, can he get there? I don't know, Rick. Can he? Like, just say what's happening. Just say, like, here comes Herbst. You know, he's going to be coming up close. I mean, I don't know. I guess you could say, you know, is there enough time? You could do something like that. But I don't know. It seems like Rick does that a lot where he asks questions. I mean, you could do that, I guess, appropriately. I guess you can't go cold turkey on that. Because there'll be times where, you know, it comes down to it. But I don't know.
Momentum coming. They're side by
They're side by side, too wide.
side through the tri-oval. Blaney.
How about say photo finish? How about start using that? It could be a photo finish. Blaney has a little momentum. Harvick coming to the outside, but Riley Herbst is behind by, you know, I don't know, something. Anything.
Harvick. Blaney. Harvick. They spin behind him. It's going to be Blaney.
I don't know. Nah, I don't know. No, that doesn't. Are the hairs standing up here? No. Sorry, man. That's not enough. I don't know if it's just the fact that Harvick got disqualified. Maybe that's a factor. Maybe that's not fair. But I don't know. Okay, hang on. Let me go back. Let me go back here again.
But again, will Herbst be aggressive enough to be able to help this 12 get back toward the front of the field, back into the lead? Is he going to push Blaney hard enough down these straightaways?
Actually, Junior's asking questions too. Now that I'm listening to this again.
To be able to clear this 12.
The third line hasn't moved, but now gaining. Another car, we'll see if they can go. Side drafting happening up front.
But now, gaining. Another car. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like what he's starting to do there, where he's describing stuff that is happening rather than asking me what might happen. Like, it's a narrow distinction, but it's an important one. Because, like, stay active. It's like, oh, this is happening. He blocks, it's almost like not using the passive voice or something. It's like he blocks this guy. He makes the move. Like, one of my favorite Rick Allen, what was it? Was it Rick Allen that he did the call when Daniel Hemrick won Phoenix? And he clinched the championship. He makes his own history. I was like, ooh, you hit it. You did it. You got it that time. It is not that. This is not that.
Blaney on the high side. Harvick on the inside.
Oh. Crickets.
Through the trial will they go. 1 lap to go. Presented by Credit One Bank.
Not even like they're getting close. Like, I always thought it was like Wally Dahlback would just laugh when stuff would get really crazy. And it's just like, loosen up a little bit. Like, I don't know. I get you can't just, again, it's not filling the air with words, with as many words as possible, but.
Oh, he almost spun the 12. Herbst into the back of Blaney.
That cleared Harvick. Harvick is clear of the 12. Now he's got to have to block both lanes.
The 12's going to have a look.
See, that's good. See, now, I like this handoff between Junior and Jeff Burton. The problem I'm having is the bingo number calling. Stop doing the 12, the 36, the 6, the 4, or whatever. Just names. These are guys. These are people. Like, just do that. It's like, oh, Blaney is making this move. Byron's making this move. Like, I when I hear numbers, I sense that, that they don't know who's in the cars. And I get that's challenging because the paint schemes are different. But the Cup Series, it's particularly less excusable because there's so little driver and team turnover from 1 week to the next. Like, every time I do the entry list articles, I hardly change anything. There's maybe like 3 things that happen at most. That's a big week. Most often it's like who Rick Ware puts in their cars this week or not.
A little momentum here. I think Harvick can hop back in front of the 12. Big run coming. The 12 to the end.
This move was good, by the way. The move Blaney made here on Harvick, this was the one that's what won him the race. Because he got so much momentum off of Riley Herbst and then just
shuffles the 4 out. Now Blaney
shuffles the 4 out. He didn't shuffle him out, Rick. He's still there. He's got Riley catching him. Just it's not the most juiced. It's not the right term.
Back stretch for the final time and into turn 3. Blaney with a push from the 24 of Byron. Here comes Harvick on the outside.
Even then, the 24 of Byron. I mean, okay, yeah. Blaney get a push from Byron. Less words.
Side. Can the 36 get to the back bumper of the 4 and give him a big
Can the 36 of the 4 make 40?
push? Momentum coming. They're side by side through the tri-oval. Blaney, Harvick. Blaney, Harvick. They spin behind him. It's going to be Blaney.
Yes!
And they're wrecking behind them.
Blaney gets the win at Talladega.
And they're wrecking behind them. Or not. No, I'm beating this to death. Yeah, it's, no, I'm sorry. That one does not, I don't know. I just know next week there's gonna be like a graphic where it just shows like Blaney, Harvick. There's gonna be a text overlay with the footage in the background, and it'll be like, it's like, oh, last week you wouldn't believe is Blaney and Harvick. I mean, that would actually be a step closer to what they should do, which is like remind you of the events that happened in previous races. There's a better way of doing that, but I mean, they won't do that. But and now I take it back. They probably won't do it at all because he got disqualified. But I mean, who knows? I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. Can we get some other clips? Is there a clip from another wreck or?
As stage 2 is now underway. Blaney up front with the 9 of Chase Elliott on the outside, a big fan favorite here at Talladega.
Big fan of this driver.
Stage 2 is another chance to go up there and try to find those points they need to climb back into the points race.
Yeah, I don't know. One of these days we're gonna do like a full race or something, and we're gonna pull some stuff up, and I think that'll be good because I'd like to do. We're getting to the end of the season here pretty soon, and I'd like to pull up some older races. I think that'll be fun. I don't know if we'll do starts and stops like this during it or not, but we'll figure it out. I think that might be something for another day. Let's do some trivia here. You guys have waited plenty long enough here, and oh my goodness, and I think we already had call on the inspection here. Let's see. Do we get Pockrass's post here? I saw some of your mentions earlier here, so it looks like we do have a call already. These are the 3 rules violated on Harvick's car. Okay, yes. 25 minutes ago, Pockrass tweets, Blaney's car is good in tech, and he is the winner. Harvick DQ'd for windshield fasteners not secure. NASCAR taking 4 engines to dyno, which is Byron's for Hendrick, Hamlin's for TRD, Haley for ECR, and Priest for Roush Yates. So some engines taken to the dyno, but Blaney is your winner, so congratulations to him. And it sounds like, unless we get other disqualifications, I don't know. I'll probably spot it some more time here to find out. But Harvick would be your last place finisher, his first since Kansas last year. So that'll be another storyline for that. So, okay. So with that, let's do a couple trivia questions and we'll wrap up here for the evening. Thank you so much for staying tuned here, folks. I know it's been kind of a longer show, but some of these play out that way. The categories once again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So we got this here. So here we go. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Oh, I'm sorry you weren't able to find my stream there, MBR. One good way to follow, if you check out my Twitter feed, or if you follow me on Twitter at LastCarOnBrock, I do post a link to the stream immediately when it starts. And other than that, definitely subscribe to the channel. Hopefully it'll get you set up on that too. Lack of recognition for driver number. Yeah, that's true. But again, it's with a charter system, that should fudge the whole thing with the Cup Series. Let's see. All right. One moment here. Alrighty. Yeah. If they announce the R&D stuff, it should be official. It's a point. Yeah, they're probably set. I'm sure I'll still be working on the article after we wrap up here on the show tonight. All right, we got teams, tracks, drivers, wild card. We got a couple for drivers. Oh, thank you so much for following me. Or thanks for subscribing to me there, MBR. And yeah, definitely check out the Twitter. That's a good way to follow for any updates on that. I appreciate you checking it out. Yeah, and while everybody's picking their category here, I'll tell you a little bit more about videos I'm working on here. So the big thing this week that was finally done, was completing the audio book for the Derek Cope book. So I wanted to make sure that was ready as close as possible to the release date for the book. I'm still looking at getting that book published in mid-November. So this month is going to be entirely about setting the release date and kind of getting some more attention. I want to get the release date announced by before we go to Phoenix at the end of this month. So we basically got a month from now to get that figured out. So that's the goal on that. My editor, we had to work on with a couple of pictures, didn't come out very clearly in the book. So I've ordered another test copy, similar to the one I showed on the show here, I believe a week or so ago. So I'm going to see how that looks. If that's set, we're pretty close to it. We're collecting a couple of reviews here to kind of finish the design of the rear of the book, but we'll get that set up. And yeah, those of you who are in the patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, the formal announcement of the release date, you will get that information first, and then we'll make that public soon after. And we'll have I have something in the works for that to kind of get ready. So once all of that is cleared up, and we're very close to getting that done, which would be great, be able to get back into the next couple of videos that I've had that I already got the edits clipped out of it. And those are, again, the video I'm doing with Mike Harmon and the video 500 Days on episode 7 on Darlington. I'd like to get at least one of those released before Phoenix if possible. But that's that's kind of a lower priority just because I want to make sure the book stuff is settled first. Because we're going to do a much quicker turnaround in promoting the book. I think I don't really want to do a whole year and a half promotion of the book. I think that would be kind of unnecessary at this point, especially since the book already got kicked back from 2021. So we'll do that, and yeah, that's going to be coming up here very shortly. So I'm very excited to get that done. There were a couple of other edits I caught along the way to kind of fix that. So I'm getting that fixed in the manuscript, and a big thanks to my editor, Robert, who's done a fantastic job on that, getting that set up there. So we're going to get that book ready to go. And again, we're not going to do pre-releases for the book. We're going to just have a focus on the release date. So you should be able to have it available at least on Amazon. And I may do some on eBay as well if you prefer that way otherwise. And try to figure out some ways to get book signings together too. That'll be the focus really through the winter into the first part of next year, especially if we cover the Busch Clash at the Coliseum, which I'd like to do. I think that would be a good opportunity if we can get something set up there. Maybe not at the event, but someplace in the area, kind of similar to what was done at Watkins Glen. So that's coming up too. So the book is going to be a big focus here going forward here. And once that's kind of put to bed and once that kind of set up there, we'll be able to kind of start gradually getting back into more of the videos and producing them too. I actually was working on a script of a video just last night. That's yet another project that is coming together. But that's going to be kind of further down the line. That one's still kind of in an early rough draft phase, so we'll have some more there. So yeah, so those of you who like the videos on the channel, you will be getting some more content here pretty soon. And some of it's going to be tied in with the Derek Cope book to begin with. But from there, we're going to go back into actual produced content from there on top of these streams. So it's going to be a very good month, I think, couple of months here, especially between now and the release date here. So that's going to be what we're setting up for. So fingers crossed on all of that. Where are we with categories? I think, are we good with wild card? Slingshot engaged. I love it. Yeah, there you go. Alrighty. Let's see here. Are we good? Is wild card the leader? That's what I'm seeing the most of here, unless I'm missing something. I see 1, I see 2, or no, I see 3 for drivers. I see 4 for drivers. Okay, drivers looks like it's the one. All right, we'll go back to drivers then. Alrighty. Ooh, this is a good question. First question, who was the first driver to win a third Southern 500? Thank you, RD Fox. Yep, drivers up 4-2 for my wild card. Okay, here's the question again. Who was the first driver to win a third Southern 500? Don't look it up. Try to guess it there. The first driver to win a third Southern 500. Who was the first driver to win a third Southern 500? Alrighty. Still have my stamp on my hand from the thing last night. I don't know if that well shows up. Oh, there it is. There you go. Who was the first driver to win a third Southern 500? Neil Monnet, Darrell Waltrip, Cale Yarborough, Pearson, Petty. Here we go. First driver to win a third Southern 500. The answer is Herb Thomas. Herb Thomas was the first. Ultimate 23 Dragon, you got it. Beast of Metal, you got it. Herb Thomas is the correct answer. All right. We'll just do a couple more here because the show ran a bit long tonight. Next question, who was runner-up to Richard Petty in the 1971 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship? Who was the runner-up to Richard Petty in the 1971 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship? Oh yeah, Stamper or Bruise. Yeah, I didn't think about it if it showed on camera, but yeah, that's what that is. Yeah, just the stamp. I already washed my hands a few times here, and it was really on there pretty good. Who was runner-up to Richard Petty in the 1971 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship? Got Pearson, Parsons, Yarborough, Allison, Hilton, Sharpe Evans, Bobby Allison. There we go. Who was runner-up to Richard Petty in the 1971 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship? I guess it's for Sam McQuagg, James Harvey Hilton, Bobby Allison. All right, here we go. The answer is James Harvey Hilton. James Harvey Hilton is the correct answer. A few of you got that one. Yep, Ultimate 23. Glenn 7000. Kevin Love, looks like you were the first one. There you go. James Hilton is the correct answer. Alrighty. Okay. We'll just do one more question here tonight, folks. I appreciate you tuning in, but it's, we made a pretty good long show here for tonight, but I hope you've all enjoyed it for sure. Last question of the evening here, folks. Who was the first modern era rookie to win a 125-mile Daytona 500 qualifier? Who was the first modern era rookie to win a 125-mile Daytona 500 qualifier? Video of this. Oh, yeah, RD Fox, you got a Bobby Allison video somebody did on that? Who was the first modern era rookie to win a 125-mile Daytona 500 qualifier? I guess it's for Jeff Gordon and Larry Smith and Hillen and Kyle Petty and Dale Earnhardt and Ryan Blaney and Will Ferrell. Okay, here we go. One more time. Who is the first modern era rookie to win a 125-mile Daytona 500 qualifier? Daytona 500 qualifier. Got a cramp in my wrist here. Okay, here we go. The answer is Wonder Boy Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon, 1993 is the correct answer. Jeff Gordon, a lot of you guys got that one. Kids Car Crazy, looks like you were the first one. Austin Foster right after. Glenn 7000, No Tires Just Gas, Beast of Metal. 611 Hornet. Earnhardt Fan Productions. There you go. Yes, Jeff Gordon is indeed the correct answer. So, okay, with that, folks, that will do it. That'll do it for the show here this evening, folks. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed putting it on here for you all. Congratulations to Ryan Blaney, your race winner today, and now Kevin Harvick, who during this show here took the final last place swap there with Ross Chastain. So it'll be a Harvick article a little bit later tonight. So a little bit of live breaking news during the show here for you all. So in the meantime, my Twitter feed is at LastCarOnBrock. Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, where you can get some bonus content as well as some interesting swag. Big news on that I will mention here at the end of the show. I am going to be ordering the magnet for for a rental car for Phoenix very, very soon. So if you want to get your name printed on there, definitely go ahead and join up to the Patreon this week. I'm going to order it probably at the end of this week here. So I'll give you you guys a few days if you're on the fence about that. If you join any level, as little as $1 up to $10 on there, we can get you on there. If you join after it's ordered, we can still write your name on there as well, and you will also be entered into the same drawing that everybody else is to win the magnet after we get back from championship weekend in Phoenix. We got a very special one on hand. I'm going to reveal the design of that to the Patreon here. I don't believe I posted it already. If I have, I don't think I've changed it since then, but I may post it again just to make sure. So that'll be available to members of all levels there as well. Yeah, so the Patreon there, at LastCarOnBrock. Definitely check out this channel if you haven't seen any other of my videos here, and be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Roval. We will find out who will be going on to the round of 8 and who will not. As we get to the next elimination round, we will talk about the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series action at what could be the final action at the Roval here, depending on what the schedule is. We still do not have it. We'll talk about that as well as the news of the week, and we will hyper-analyze more broadcasts here for your viewing enjoyment. That and everything else will be coming up next Sunday. So tune in here about 15 minutes or so after the checkered flag of the Cup Series race. We'll be hopping on here and having some more fun in the evening here. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening. Have a safe week out there, and I will see you all next week. Oh, wait a minute. Beast of Metal, I missed your super chat, bud. I need to stop doing that. Beast of Metal, the answer to Fox Trucks booth clearly is not overpaying a veteran play-by-play near his prime to come in and enforce order. They clearly believe throwing yet another rookie to the Wolves will work. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I do think it is a bit of a strategy here. They need to. I mean, I agree to an extent that they have people that they bring on there that don't have a lot of play-by-play experience, but they have a lot of Fox NASCAR experience. That's kind of the problem there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I mean, they really should. I like the way you put it here about, somebody in their prime to come in and enforce order. That's the most important thing. And I think that's something that it didn't used to be the case at Fox, because I think Mike Joy, for as friendly and as great of a personality as he is, I always felt he kept a pretty firm hand on the wheel. Like, if Darrell Waltrip and Larry McReynolds were getting a little bit too goofy, he would reel it in a little bit. I don't sense that from Rick Allen, and I certainly don't sense it from Jamie Little, because she just kind of falls into that, which is unfortunate. That's what you need. You need it needs to be a firm hand on the wheel, somebody who suffers no fools, but, and this sounds like a contradiction, somebody that also doesn't take themselves too seriously. You don't want the person to be unlikable. The person has to be personable, and that's where the challenging part is. But you can't be a pushover. Guys like Adam Alexander and Rick Allen, I think they exude the wrong message in the booth, and I think that's a big problem with it there. So that's kind of the issue I take with that. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And I agree, Beast of Metal. I think that's exactly something that needs to be, really re-examined that much more. And Yeah, and it's not fair to who they do put up. I think that's the other part to look at there. So, yeah, but again, I think it's a fair point. So, again, apologies, Beast of Metal. I think I must have been in full rant there during that, but thank you so much for the super chat. Super chats are not expected here in the chat, but they are always appreciated. And if I ever forget to read yours, definitely let me know, because that's the very least I could do if you're willing to do those there as well. So I think we're caught up. I hope I didn't miss anybody else's. Thank you again, Bowser Jr. XD, for yours as well. Kudos to you on your commentary as well. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, awesome. All right, now we're good. Hit it.